Are we here?
Hey!
Whoa.
Hey!
Elliot, where are you?
I am outside an undisclosed location, my house, in sunny Los Angeles, California. And where are you guys?
Oh, I just meant I couldn't see you, but I guess I got to switch to gallery view. There you are.
Oh, boy. Thanks, Dan.
Hey guys, what's up?
Thanks. Glad we kicked things off in the spirit of the Flophouse. Total professionalism.
Sorry.
Hey.
Sorry to everyone that we were a little late. Brief technical difficulties, but we're okay now.
Entirely my fault, unlike that totally destroyed intro just now, which was not my fault.
I like to think we shared the blame. Oh, there. Look at that.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Charlene, you got to refresh the page.
I sent out an email to everyone before this. I'm like, guys, let's make this more professional than most of those streaming events that have been going on out there. Let's make it look real nice. And
let's show everybody that we've worked for television before.
We kicked this off right.
I haven't.
Yeah.
Fair point. Yeah.
So I don't know what I'm doing.
Well,
let's
Dan,
introduce ourselves.
Let's introduce ourselves and say what we do and what we're doing here and all that stuff. The stuff we planned.
Yeah. We're the Flophouse. We watch bad movies and we talk about them, usually on a podcast or on the stage, not usually in small boxes. I am Dan McCoy.
I'm Stuart Wellington.
And over here, it's me, Elliot Kalin. Hey, guys. So what are we going to do on this video cast, Dan?
We are going to talk about how.
Notice I said video cast because we're watching it as opposed to podcast because pod means ears.
Yeah. Yep.
Somehow the camera being below your face, Elliot, makes everything more intense when you like talk down to me. And you talk down to me a lot.
Just wait, because I've designed this so that if it goes long enough, the sun will go down and I'll be lit just from the outdoor light above me. In which case, it'll be totally scare-tacular.
Very ominous.
I like the dad energy you got right now. You got that button-up shirt. You're looming over me.
Check out my haircut given to me by my wife during quarantine times. Very dad. Yeah.
It's that kind of haircut where you're saying, I don't care what it looks like.
Right.
You know, like I don't need to appeal to anybody else. I got everything figured out already.
It's an insult to both me and my family, but okay, sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
So Dan, what are we doing today?
Well, okay. First, we're going to do a few visual presentations. This part will actually be probably the most like what our live show is because it's just watching a bunch of slides and visuals while we talk. So that's very similar.
Before we do that, though, Dan, I think we want to talk a little bit about why we're doing it. For what? Yeah.
Yes. I was getting there.
Okay. It was interesting the way you introduced chapter 2 before chapter 1.
Well, you said, what are we doing tonight? So I thought that needed to be an explanation. Anyway, so the show will run like that. We'll talk about Howard the Duck a little bit later, but we're doing this for charity. We are encouraging folks to donate to any charity they like, really, but we have some recommended ones that I think that there's a slide that we're going to have to show where people can go, and that's up on the Flophouse website, flophousepodcast.com. If you go over to the blog section, there's a charitable giving link that shows there it is, how to do everything. You give some potential charities you might want to donate to. Again, donate where you like. These are just some helpful suggestions because I know that sometimes one barrier to entry for doing charity is just not knowing where to go. But there's a raffle attached to this. First I should say the money is going either to hunger alleviation as a result of, sort of in reaction to the pandemic we're living through, or institutions dedicated to racial justice, just helping out more in that arena. Obviously, it's on all of our minds right now. And that's where the money is going to be going. And there is a charity drawing. We are trying to encourage the charitable giving by, you can email a receipt of your donation of $20 or more. If you have proof that you donated $20 or more to one of those charities or a charity of your choice, send it to flophousecharity@gmail.com. Some folks send it to the regular address already, and I admire your enthusiasm. I will count those in there, but there's a special email.
Very generous, because that's not according to the rules.
Yeah, no, it's not according to the rules as written.
They didn't see the slide.
And I will randomly select, I will get out the old random number generator that I have on my phone because I'm a nerd.
Mm-hmm.
And we will select 3 people or 3 entries to get a Flophouse merchandise prize pack. Stuart, did you have those on hand? Did you remember that part? Or
yeah, I did. We have some stickers. Yep, that's 1. That's 2. And the Crown and Glory. Yep, that's us as cats from the movie Cats. And we have a poster that I'm going to unroll. And we have a enamel pin that I forgot to grab.
This is all new merchandise, right? It's never been. We haven't sold it yet. It's all new, never been seen before, basically.
I should just put this in front of me the whole show, I think.
You're both beautiful. You and the poster.
So yeah, we'll choose 3 people at random or 3 entries at random. Could be a household, who knows? And they'll get a prize pack. Also, if we get a total of 500 charitable receipts or more than that, we're going to do a staged reading. Well, not a staged reading, a table read, let's say, of The Boy Next Door, the hit J-Lo thriller. And also, the show will be matching for every email we get indicating a donation of $20 or more. We will be giving $20 split evenly between, and I have it written down here, the Community Justice Exchange's National Bail Fund Network, providing bail services across the world. It's just a network of local bail funds, and Feeding America, which likewise is a network of food banks across America. And
these
so
are
up to a cap of $10,000, but we will be matching. Well, not matching. That implies direct matching. You heard me the first time.
Dan, you're over-explaining. They don't need. It's too much detail.
Yeah. So, and those are 2 charities that are near to all of our hearts. We've all donated to them individually, and we're eager to have you inspire us to spend more of our collective money.
Very much so.
Also, I know that you came here for laughs, but Elliot, I think that you do want, you have something to say on behalf of all of us before the show proper starts.
Yes, it's a strange time for comedy, as every comedy show says now, because they have to. Before we start the show, we want to acknowledge that this is a very hard time for everyone we know, and it's a much harder time for some people than for others. And we wanted to very clearly express our support for the Black Lives Matter movement, because Black lives do matter. In a rational world, if we lived in a rational world, that would be a fact so obvious it would not have to be said. But we don't live in a rational world, unfortunately, so it must be said over and over and over again. Black lives matter. If Black lives do not matter, no lives matter. So Black lives matter. They're human beings, and so their lives matter as much as you or I or anyone else, because human beings matter to each other, because they're important. Dan, Stewart, and I, we are deeply thankful and deeply grateful for everyone currently risking their safety and their health to make this country fairer, freer, and safer for people of color. By doing so, they're also making this country fairer, freer, and safer for everyone. Seeing so many of my fellow Americans standing up against institutional racism, even in the face of brutal violence, as we've all seen, has given me a portion of hope in a strange way that I haven't felt in a long time. And this is going to sound naive. I'm going to give you a naivete warning right now. But earlier this week, I finished reading Stuart Little to my son, and I started to tear up a little bit as I got to the final lines, because seeing these protests have made me feel like they're almost true again, in a way, not quite there, but almost true. And those lines are, as he peeked ahead into the great land that stretched before him, the way seemed long, but the sky was bright, and somehow he felt he was headed in the right direction. So we wanted to say thank you to those leading the struggle. Thank you to those bearing the weight of the struggle. And we hope we can do what we can to support you now and for as long as this unfortunately needs to be field of action that needs to be taken. And now, having said that, we're going to do the presentations. And then we're going to talk about a movie where Leah Thompson falls in love with a duck.
Yeah. Our purview.
Yeah, I mean, that's there's certain fights are fought by certain people, and our fight is against Howard the Duck. We'll find out.
I don't know.
We don't know. Throw it.
Elliot has the first presentation.
Mm-hmm.
So I am teeing him up by saying the words, Elliot has the first presentation.
As is traditional at these shows, we will now each make our presentation of facts, and then you, the viewer, will decide who gets to be Joe Millionaire. That's how it works, right? So I'm going to have my presentation. I want to give you a brief warning. This presentation was written like a week and a half ago, so it somehow already feels out of date. And for a moment, I was like, oh, this was like working at the Daily Show felt like, where you do 2 days of work and suddenly it would be not relevant anymore. But here we go. Let me see. I should have control of the screen. Yes. Comedy in times of crisis is a difficult thing. You have to push things far enough to be funny and meaningful, but not so far that you lose sight of taste and tact, which is why my presentation is entitled, How Do You Solve a Problem Like Corona? Virus Presentations, featuring the nuns from The Sound of Music. Because I wasn't sure, to be honest, what to do with my presentation for this show. Usually when we do a live show, for anyone who hasn't seen it, I roast the city that we're performing in. But I'm at home right now. What was I gonna do? Really take the piss out of my gopher mound strewn yard? Look at all those poorly filled holes. Is this a front yard or the rise of Skywalker? No, I'm not gonna take a shit on my own house. I live with a toddler. There's already someone who takes shits on my house. Actual photo. Now, my next idea was that I was going to pitch my COVID-era romantic comedy in which a snobby businesswoman takes home her slobby jock Tinder date the night the mayor of New York orders a citywide lockdown. Now, Anne Hathaway and Channing Tatum are stuck having a 100-night stand. And for the right, that's John Hodgman as the nosy neighbor who refuses to respect personal space. So 100-night stand, coming soon to a theater near you. I don't know, maybe. The problem with that bit is, the one problem with it, otherwise flawless, is there's already a perfect movie about what it's like to self-quarantine with another person, getting on each other's nerves while falling in love. And it is called The Lighthouse. That's your COVID movie right there. I saw that at the very beginning of the quarantine. I said, finally, a movie that speaks exactly to me. So since I couldn't do those things, I figured I would take a page from my old satire days and make jokes about something that's really making me mad these days. And that means I'm retitling this presentation, Just Wear a Fucking Mask Already. Brought to you by, there's a lag for me, I don't know if there's for you, the British Small Box Respirator, official British Army gas mask of World War I. It's just like Brooke Shields says, nothing comes between me and my British small box respirator. So listen to Brooke Shields. Anyway, so this is Just Wear a Fucking Mask Already. Let's start with the argument against wearing simple, inexpensive face masks when going outside during a pandemic spread mainly by exposure to other people's bodily fluids. Let's see that argument. There aren't any. Oh, the slide is blank because there aren't any. Thank you. Now, look, I know, it's true. Masks are uncomfortable. Hey, you know what's really comfortable?
What?
A coffin. You got that padding on the sides. Look at those ruffles, little pillow under your head. No wonder vampires sleep in them. But hey, you're not a vampire, right? I don't think so. So just wear a fucking mask. Another dumbass fake reason not to wear a mask that I've heard a lot lately, more so a week and a half ago, but still sometimes, is that wearing a mask is supposedly cowardly. You'll see these people on Twitter who are all, George Washington didn't wear a mask. Yeah, George Washington, the general who demanded his troops be inoculated against smallpox at a time when that was considered a radical treatment. The George Washington whose very mouth was filled with rotten, moldy-ass wooden teeth. Something tells me if they had had masks at the time, I think he would have worn them. And technically for that joke, I know really George Washington didn't actually have wooden teeth. That's a lie. But if I was going to do a joke of his real teeth, his real fake teeth looked like this. And I did not want to have you look at that Clive Barker-esque dental torture contraption that was sitting inside the first president's mouth. So rather than look at that, come on. just wear a fucking mask already. Okay, masks. I'm officially turning into like Dennis Miller now. Masks are great. Just in delivery, not in his political stance. Hey, you know who wears masks? Superheroes. Spider-Man wears a mask. Who else? Let's see. Black Panther wears a mask. What other famous heroes wear masks? Iron Man wears a mask. Oh, that's great. You need more? Okay. You know, Star-Lord wears a mask when he goes outside. Not when he's on the spaceship, but other times. Hey, look at this. Even that symbol of patriotism himself, Captain America wears a mask. Not a mask that would really help in this particular scenario, but I think you get what I'm saying. Hey, you know what superhero doesn't wear a mask? Superman. Hey, you know what happened to Superman? He died. Yeah. Because Superman is just more interesting when he's dead. I'm sorry, Jerry Seinfeld. It's true. He's just more interesting than he's dead. I'm sorry. And now, in case you guys wanted, here's a nerdier version of that last bit. Hey, you know what superhero doesn't wear a mask? Adam Warlock. And you know what happened to him? Well, he eventually turned into an evil version of himself with crazy hair, because Adam Warlock is more interesting as a self-doubting space Jesus doomed to succumb to the darkness inside of him. I'm sorry, Jim Starlin. It's just true. So in case you didn't realize, that was the nerdier version of that joke.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, all right. In case you're wondering, come on, America. You love masks. It's why you made The Mask, the 8th highest grossing movie of 1994. Back then, you couldn't go anywhere, certainly not my house, without hearing Jim Carrey's classic catchphrase, "Somebody stop me," from going outside during a pandemic without the proper face covering. The Mask was a surprisingly prescient movie. For instance, The Mask understood earlier than anyone that only an insane person would get into the 90s swing revival. So thank you, The Mask, for showing us the way on that one. Here's my final argument for why you should just wear an effing mask during a pandemic, which is a crazy thing to have to say, as it implies, one, that someone needs a reason to wear a mask during a pandemic, and two, that said person would need multiple reasons to do so, other than that there's a pandemic going on. And this reason is Halloween. Ever heard of it? It's the most fun night of the year. Everyone eats tons of candy, and we get to find out, finally, what Mr. Peanut, Mr. Rogers, and Mr. Met would look like if they were sexy. So Halloween is great. But you know what people do on Halloween? Hey, here's a hint. They wear masks. Wearing a mask is, let's face it, it's how we can make this pandemic feel like it's Halloween all year round. Also, the pandemic is like Halloween because it's scary, but I'm mainly trying to put a positive spin on the mask, so you understand why I would emphasize the fun part and not the scary part. Now, hey guys, look, I get it. Hey, listen, we live in a political climate where every single goddamn thing becomes an opportunity to show what tribe you belong to, whether it be what color tie you wear, or where you buy your chicken sandwiches, or whether you're happy or horrified that the Oscar for Best Picture finally went to the actual Best Picture of the Year for the first time since like 2 years ago. And to be honest, also the year before that too. Though that was a close one. You get what I'm saying. The Oscars are usually off base, but they've had a surprisingly good, decent run over the past few years. Okay, you get my main point. My main point is there need to be some things in this world that we can't let politics interfere with. We all have to do certain things to stay alive. It's not like you can just say, all these liberal scientists say I need to breathe oxygen. Well, they can go to hell. I'm breathing carbon dioxide. From now on, I'm officially a plant. You can't do that. By the way, that sign says don't tread on tree. I made that. Originally it said don't tread on me, but I changed the last line. But it's
okay.
It's professional. Look, we all need to stay healthy and keep our families safe, no matter which old man you vote for in November. And it is objectively messed up, you have to admit, when the president of the United States' policy towards masks is less sanitary than Hannibal Lecter's. The man's a cannibal, and he's wearing a mask to protect the people around him. He's protecting them from being eaten by him, but the point remains the same. He's wearing it to protect other people. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, hey, just wear a fucking mask already. And when you wear a mask, why not consider the British small box respirator? You know, since they sponsor the presentation and all. Thank you. And that's all I have to say on that subject. The floor, Dan, is yours.
I like how you explained that callback, Elliot.
In case people forgot, you know?
Okay.
In case people forgot.
Okay. It's my turn. So everyone shut up.
Sure, yeah. Wait for the applause to die down.
Yeah.
No, yeah, the audience is
this,
going nuts.
this is a lot weirder without applause, guys.
I mean, usually, just for people who've never been to a live show, usually when I finish my presentation, the audience goes crazy and they carry me around the venue on their shoulders for a while, while Dan and Stuart just bow down. They do a lot of like, we're not worthy type stuff.
Yeah. Well,
and then eventually I get a key to the city and then the show continues.
Yeah, that's why the shows are so long and the venues hate us, is because after your thing, like everyone wants to high five you. So we have to like make time for that.
Yeah. You've seen those little thumbnails when you're scrolling through the internet where it's a picture of us and it goes, "Venues hate these guys." Like, I should click on that article.
Yeah, it says from around the web. Yeah.
So I chose this virtual show when there's lag on the slides to have my most slides ever. So let's see how it goes. Thanks to the pandemic, many of us are currently. Do I have the control? Currently stuck inside. And if you're sheltering in place with other people, you've been struggling with one huge problem. Oh boy, this is slow. Agreeing on a movie to watch. Differences in movie taste can make picking shared entertainment very different. What if you only want to watch horror, but your partner is a scaredy cat? Oh boy. What if they,
Dan,
what if they only want to watch
hit the button earlier than you normally would?
I'm trying to anticipate it. What if they only want to watch Boondock Saints, but you have taste? Huh? What if you're Elliot and you only want to watch movies from the Czech New Wave, but Sammy only wants to watch Newsies?
Very accurate.
And most importantly, what if you want to watch porn, but your partner won't leave the house?
Is that what that image represents?
Good save. Oh yeah.
Well, I'm here to help with Dan McCoy's masterclass in movie compromise, which will probably save all of your interpersonal relationships, and I'm asking for nothing in return other than a short thanks in your wedding program. My first tip: narrow your focus and work from there. For instance, try and figure out what vibe you're in the mood for, and then narrow your choices down by genre. But be careful and don't be misled by movie titles. If you want a Western, do not watch All Quiet on the Western Front. If you want a mystery, don't watch Mystery Men. And if you want a comedy, don't watch The King of Comedy. These movies are all terrible examples of their genres. All Quiet on the Western Front is a war movie. Mystery Men is a terrifying slice of Cronenbergian body horror about a man whose flatulence is so bad it makes people pass out. And King of Comedy is a prequel to The Joker. Also, you can narrow your focus by deciding on just one streaming service to pick from. Otherwise, you'll find yourself scrolling endlessly through options. And buckle up, because here comes the most slides. From Netflix to Amazon Prime to Hulu to the Criterion Channel.
All necessary.
To HBO Go to Showtime to Plex. To Crackle, to Tubi, to Mubi, to Cracklubi, to Guackle, to Plubo, to Tubo, to Gooby, to Gumby, to Punchy.
Wow.
Sneezy.
Should we just leave Dan and go on the rest of the show?
To Gazoo. To Blondie. To Rex Morgan, MD.
Switched it up at the end.
Not Quibi, though. Never Quibi.
Yeah, somebody finally got him.
Back to the punchline. But by far, the best way to decide on a film is to come to a direct compromise. And the way to do that is to each suggest a movie, then figure out what movie is the exact midpoint between your two choices. So both of you get some of what you want. It sounds hard, but it's simpler than you think. For instance, if you want to watch the slick Vegas caper film Ocean's 11, and your partner wants to watch the early Hitchcock thriller Shadow of a Doubt, then your compromise film would be Mission Impossible. Because
Explain.
the director, Brian De Palma, is a Hitchcock disciple, and like Ocean's 11, it features a heist. Let's do a harder one. Say you want to watch Avengers Endgame, and they want to watch Made in Manhattan. Clearly, the answer is he's just not that into you, because it's both a romantic comedy and a big ensemble film featuring Scarlett Johansson and Bradley Cooper. Let's do one more. Suppose you want to watch the sexual odyssey, Eyes Wide Shut, and they want to watch the heartwarming animal odyssey, Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey. Clearly, the only possible choice is to watch the documentary Zoo, the heartwarming true story of a man who loved animals so much that he died due to a perforation of the colon after attempting anal sex with a horse. Problem solved. But Dan, you say, what if there are more than 2 people in my household? Well, don't worry, friends. My system scales up for a crowd. Say that one of you wants to watch The Danish Girl, and another wants to watch Fritz the Cat, and the third chooses The Unsinkable Molly Brown.
I don't believe these people are in the same family, Dan.
What a weird household you have. So let's examine the elements. You've got inexplicably respected director Tom Hooper. You've got weird-looking sexualized animals. And you've got a film based on a stage musical. So obviously the answer is Cats. Now.
You were lucky that one worked out, Dan.
Here's another. Apt Pupil, Suspiria, and Lady and the Tramp. Well, you've got Sir Ian McKellen. You've got Ballet. And uncomfortably racially coded cats. So clearly the answer is also Cats.
Okay, 2 for 2.
One final example before wrapping up. Suppose your household's choices are the Stephen King anthology horror movie Cat's Eye, the Burt Reynolds Western The Man Who Loved Cat Dancing, and the musical beach party mystery Catalina Caper, starring frequent Disney child star Tommy Kirk. Of course, the correct film in that case would be Jaws. It combines the beach from Catalina Caper with the animal-themed horror of Cat's Eye, and of course, famed composer John Williams scored both Jaws and The Man Who Loved Cat Dancing. Now, do you guys think I was going to say cats? I'm going by plots and themes, guys, not titles. They're different types of movies. You don't recommend Moby Dick and Dick Tracy to the same people, all right? But I didn't mean to be insulting. But seriously, if your household can't agree on anything, just watch Cats, because that shit is bonkers. Thank you.
What a public service, Dan.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. It sped up eventually.
I just like to imagine the hours you spent making the slides of the logos.
I had to make logos for all of those things.
Now, Stuart, I think it's your time to shine.
I'm just waiting for it to have control, guys. But you know, aren't we all just trying to look for control some way in our lives?
Yeah.
That's fair. That's very fair.
No, I think that's. Oh wait, I'm still controlling it. Oh, and is it? Do you have it, Stuart? No.
Nope.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh look, the.
Oh, that's why. So you would have had control, but Dan had an animated slide.
Oh yeah. All right.
That he forgot about.
Okay. I'm controlling the screen.
Did you contract out your presentation, and that's why you didn't know it ended with some animation?
Well, you know,
no.
The GIF apparently you gotta like click it twice. Anyway.
So,
like carpenters say, click it twice, cut once.
You know, I just skipped right through the opening of my presentation. You know, what's the point? Like, I made this thing a couple of weeks ago. It kind of feels silly now to do like Elliot said, but we'll do it. We'll do it. Okay. So, what's going on, guys? You know, obviously a few months ago, the pandemic hit. People were forced to stay inside. In some cases, Businesses were forced to shut down. Look at me
Oh,
right there. That was the night that was March 16th, the night that all the bars and restaurants in New York had to shut. And in addition to businesses being shut down, like some cities are still on lockdown, like New York. New York still businesses haven't reopened. So not being able to go to work, I had a lot of free time on my hands. And what am I going to fill that with? That's right. The only thing that's going to keep me sane is some hobby time. So a solo hobby is a great thing to do. That's something you can do on your own. It's like, I don't know, baking bread like Dan would do, or, like starting a novel like Elliot might do, or maybe like sitting at home and reading Twitter until your eyeballs leak out of your head. Kind of anything to cure the constant ongoing anxiety about just what's going on in the world. So for me, of course, I chose the hobby of painting wargaming miniatures. I got a long history with the painting little soldiers, little dudes. I could use the fantasy escape, and I could use something to fill the hole in my usually busy social schedule. Now I started this hobby painting Warhammer, Warhammer Fantasy Battle Third Edition to be exact. We bought the box, my little brother and I. It's a game that is you play out battles set in a pretty traditional Tolkien-esque fantasy world. And it comes with figurines that you glue together and you hand paint. So as a kid, I was like, this is perfect hobby for Stuart. And my little brother, when we were dividing up the models that came in the box, my little brother chose the elves, but I took the orcs and the goblins. Now that I think about it, I mean, it's hard not to think about the long history and problems of Tolkienist orcs and all that bullshit and all the roots, but I don't know. Like I like painting little green guys and little monsters. Now, to point out, just to clarify, these are not my models that we're looking at. Now, flash forward a few years later, and I have moved to the big city, okay? I moved to New York City, and I started working for a company called Games Workshop. Now, that's the company that sells Warhammer.
I was going to say very tasteful New York image, Stuart.
And it seems just like yesterday that I was working in a busy hobby store full of happy nerds and cool New York celebrities like Ansel Elgort and the son of Matthew Modine. And even though I don't work for this company anymore, I still love painting models, and I still love painting goblins. Now, unlike those previous models, these are actually models that I've painted.
Ooh.
Okay. I'm assuming
Wow.
everybody's applauding.
So are
Yep.
those your hands also?
Those are someone else's hands. I hired a hand model, but thank you for assuming those were my hands.
They're beautiful. Look at those cuticles. Lovely.
Yep. Now, with that in mind, if I'm going to be starting a quarantine hobby project, I'm going to need a little bit of a change. A fresh slate, a new game, something to kind of turn over a new leaf. And of course, the game I chose was the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game. Now, obviously, the reasons I would be interested in this game, for those who aren't familiar with the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game, it is based on a series of popular novels by George R.R. Martin. I was eager when choosing this game to see if finally somebody would make a adaptation of those novels that was worth a shit. And more important,
wow.
I chose this game because of friends. My buddies, Riff and Alex, were already playing the game, so I would have two friends that I could play with. They were already getting involved. I could email them pictures of my models. We could talk about game strategies, all kinds of stuff. And maybe it would cure my loneliness. So when trying to decide what army I wanted to play, I chose the Free Folk, also known as the Wildlings. They're an ill-equipped horde who are just kind of spend so much of their time just fighting for survival and trying to justify their existence. Now, and they're also filled with a lot of colorful characters. You got like Mance Raider, the king beyond the wall. You got Val, the wildling princess. You got Craster, the fellow with a remarkably large family. And maybe painting these models might cure some of that loneliness, and talking to my buddies might help me remember the good times. You know, back when I was hanging out with Riff every day and we were just goofing around. Okay, let's leave that one on screen for a minute.
This whole thing just so you could put that up there. I don't.
That's not a small part of why I wanted to put that one up there. Okay, so let's get to painting.
This is a picture from your wedding, is it not?
Yeah, 9 years ago. But I mean, the important picture from that day was me and Riff in our tuxedos. So let's get to painting, shall we? Now, this is my first Wildling Raider. And anytime I'm going to paint a model, I got to come up with a cool name. And of course, I want something that's kind of tough sounding, that also sounds like a Norse guy. How about Skiar? Okay, Skiar. And Skiar, you're kind of like a frost-hardened nomad from the wilderness, ready to slit the bellies of the kneelers. As you can see, I like doing a cool voice when I paint a model. If I paint a model that has like laser guns, I make pew, pew, pew sounds. Or if I'm painting a tank, I make little tank sounds. For him, I'll do a cool voice. So after priming the model, I gave it a quick guide coat so I could see his battle scars and his trophies. So let's pop over to the old wiki of Ice and Fire. I'm going to get some ideas of what I'm going to paint on this guy. This is a super good resource. It explains what the wildlings are all about. Now, anytime I paint a model, I always like to start with the base right there, so I kind of see where he's standing. As you can see, it's like a dead winter ground. There's no snow on there yet, but I'm definitely going to put some snow on there because, as they say, winter is coming. Right?
That is what they say.
Yeah.
Well,
oh, okay. The presentation agreed.
Yeah. Thanks, Skiar. Skiar agrees with you. Now, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the face. Going to give him some like wind-chapped cheeks and some like wild, dirty hair, but the picture's kind of shitty. Oh, thanks, Kiar. But I mean, you know, I put some time into it, but you know, oh yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of nervous. It's in a bit of a rush. You know, I'd heard the horns of battle. Now we're gonna paint some clothes on this guy. Now, as you can see, he's covered in skins. I don't think I want to do the voice anymore. Okay, I'll quit the voice. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't feel right. I don't know. Like, I'm not into it. So when I'm painting the model, as you can see, he's back up there. He's got a variety of warm and cool colors. I want to put a variety of different colors on the model so it's not super boring. Look, you know, I want him to look realistic, but not just like a cover up, just like a bunch of browns. Oh, yeah, thanks. You get it, Scar. Now it's time to give you some weapons. I imagine those weapons are stone and bone. Maybe you like stole them from somebody or something. I don't know. Yeah, you get it. Now I'm gonna be a little. This is weird. It's a little off topic, but right after the bars closed, I got pretty sick, Skiar. Yeah, I got the COVID. I mean, all the symptoms matched up. You know, loss of taste and smell. It was, you know, I didn't know what to do. Yeah, so, and like, I started getting like, it took like 2 weeks. Yeah, no, thanks. But I got better. I mean, I got tested. I have the antibodies. Yeah, I mean, I didn't I don't think I infected anybody. I mean, you're probably okay. I mean, I know I'm lucky. I'm still scared. Yeah, thanks. I mean, I feel like I shouldn't celebrate, but I mean, you're cool, Scar. Like, you know what I'm talking about. Like, just like, it's a tough time for everyone, and like people have it way worse than me, and people have lost family members, and yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just try my best and trying to help. I don't know. Maybe people can learn from this or something. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that's how you paint a model. Uh, yeah. Just got 39 more to go. Thanks. That's me and Jimmy Buffett.
So okay.
Uh,
Thanks for bringing the downbeat energy at the end of our presentation section.
I just, Stuart, I think I need you to know that our time is up, and that's going to be $150.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Skiar just told me. And I'm like, but I bought you and took you out of a box and painted you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I feel like I need to recover from that one-man show. It was very affecting.
Yes.
I was like, is Stuart having a breakdown? Like, I don't know what to do. Should we send people over?
He's just that good an actor, Dan.
He's that good an actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to save this and send it to casting agents for when
Right.
I'm assuming they're going to exclusively be making movies and TV shows from people's Zoom cameras, right?
I mean,
you guys work in the biz.
no, probably. I think that we shouldn't maybe do it for your Saturday Night Live audition, just because.
Okay.
Like, no, there was a kind of Norm Macdonald-esque energy to that.
Okay.
Yeah, that I think.
Yeah. Didn't you hear me at the start where I'm like, "Hey, it's me, Norm Macdonald."
Yeah.
So I must have missed that. Were you?
Yeah, you must. Maybe you weren't. Maybe you zoned out for a moment. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. It was all in character as Norm Macdonald.
Yeah. Well, as a guy doing a Norm Macdonald impression, Stuart is 2 impressions deep. He's not doing a Norm Macdonald impression. He's doing a guy doing a Norm Macdonald.
Okay, so it's a sort of an inception of impressions.
Yeah, a guy who thinks Norm Macdonald sounds like this and has like a gritty, growly voice like Stuart did.
So normally around now we do some kind of an intro and we say where we're recording the episode at, but we're in our homes, right? But are we gonna do that anyway? Oh, now that's Dan's cat,
Dan
Archie.
Pandering to the crowd.
Jumped up. Well, why not pander? Normally we do something about where they live, but we can't do that. So yeah. We're gonna make another charity pitch. All of the information about how to be entered into the raffle for that prize pack is at that URL, as well as a few charity notions, as well as the email to send receipts to. And again, for every donation above $20, we, the Flaphouse ourselves, will be donating $20 split evenly between food banks across the U.S. and bail funds across the U.S.
And we'll be accepting donations starting tonight, but also anytime that any donations have been made in the last week.
Yes,
but
and
multiple donations count.
And we'll accept them from a week from today. Going forward for the next week as well, because I know that a lot of people will be watching this later because of time zone issues and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
That was me explaining time zones. Okay.
I mean, you didn't really explain time zones. You referenced them.
Well, it has to do with the rotation of the Earth, Elliot. It's very, very complex. I, of course, understand it down to the letter, but I would.
And what letter would that be?
T for time zones.
Story checks out.
Or Z for zones probably would have worked even better because it's at the end of the alphabet.
Yeah, zones, comma, time, probably.
Or P for pizzones.
No, that's a different thing. Time pizzones are actually different. That's actually a pizza calzone, and when you bite into it, it takes you to any point in history. So
Guys,
you can
are we
serve
talking about the Pizzone of Time?
Yes, talking about the Pizzone of Time.
That was the original name of that Salvador Dali painting with all the clocks that are folded into pizzones.
Yeah, because he was trying. It was called the Pizzone Stints of Memory because he was trying to paint a pizzone and he could not quite remember what one looked like because they weren't having that particular promotion in his area of Spain at the time, and so he just was trying, and they just keep coming out like clocks, and it was like, these are pizzones. They keep coming out like a clocks, and people are like, Salvador Dali, like, you're not Italian. Why do you sound like that? Because I don't know how to do a Spanish accent. Like, what was that? What accent was that? I don't know. You know, he was a strange guy, Salvador Dali. Now,
I just want to also. There's been chatter on the internet. I'm not wearing makeup other than eyebrow. Audrey did enhance my very thin eyebrows.
I'd like to see some evidence of the chatter on the internet.
I'll send it to you after.
Yeah, please do. I'd like to. That seems, it's like there's been chatter on the internet that I lost weight recently. You're right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The chatter on the internet I'm getting is text messages telling me that there's a copy of The Power Broker behind Dan.
Yeah. That is not. Well, I mean, it's kind of a joke these days. I was like, oh, that's great. the
times like these.
But
times like these, department.
I did actually read it years ago because it's Elliot's favorite book, and I had respect for Elliot back then, and I wanted
I'm
to
so
be
glad
like
that him. I'm so glad I didn't recommend it to you now.
Yeah,
I would have slapped it out of my hands over Zoom. You would have reached through the screen like it was an ad for a 3D movie and slapped it out of my
I'd be
hand.
like, whatever, nerd, and smack it down like you were trying to make a basket with the Power Broker.
I mean, you could make a basket out of the Power Broker. It's a very big book.
It is.
It would not be a huge basket, but you could probably put eggs in there.
You should put all of them there, though, Elliot.
So we're going to talk about Howard the Duck, right?
Yeah, okay.
Speaking of eggs.
Put eggs in a basket.
Great transition.
Now, Dan, did you...
Wait, hold on. We're doing the intro to the actual
wait, do you want to say that later on in the show, if it works out, we'd like, after we talk about Howard the Duck, we'd like to interact with the viewers. If they submit any questions over Twitter, please use the hashtag #FlopQuestion, and I will be trying to monitor those later on. And maybe if it works, we'll take some and we'll answer them after we talk about Howard T. Duck. So that's hashtag #FlopQuestion on Twitter. Daniel?
Thank you for doing that. I did have that written in my notes, but forgot. And so now...
You forgot to look at the notes?
Well,
this guy needs a reminder to look at his reminder.
Oh, God. Let's
roasted.
Get into the feature presentation.
You got it.
Chilling.
It adequately captured the feeling of watching Howard the Duck. Or did it? Find out tonight on The Flophouse. Hi, I'm Elliot Kalin.
I'm Dan McCoy.
And I'm Stuart, don't you know?
Oh, that's like
Are you Irish?
I don't know. I'm trying to pull the shit Elliot normally does.
Yeah, I usually do something like that. So, guys, let's talk about Howard the Duck. Now, before we get into this, I just want people to know the basic background of this particular duck and his name, which is Howard. Howard the Duck, as many know, is based on a comic book series created by Steve Gerber. Gene Colan, I think, was the first artist on the main series, and it came out from Marvel Comics. And he was one of these cult success characters, very popular among the hip college students, but never such a big character that he could, for instance, carry a feature film franchise. Or could he? One, George Lucas wanted to know the answer to that question. And so a certain film was put into production, a certain film which holds a special place in my family history. 4 years ago, as the legend is told, when I was visiting
4 years ago?
But no, years ago. No, not 4 years ago. For the legend.
There's a legend already after 4 years?
No, there's 4 legends from years ago. I'm going to tell one of them.
Okay.
Okay, the first of the 4 legends, or maybe the second. It depends on how you count the legends. And it's going to be worth all the buildup when you hear the legend, for sure, is that apparently my family was visiting the family of my uncle. when at the time, bone surgeon, now retired bone surgeon. And my father had some sort of pain in, let's say, his back, his wrist, who knows. Being a family member to a man in the medical establishment, he said, hey, can you take a look at this and tell me about what's going on? And my uncle replied, according to my mother, wait until I finish watching Howard the Duck. And so my father had to sit there and watch the rest of Howard the Duck with my uncle until he get an answer to his medical problem. Did I witness this interaction? I don't remember it, but I do remember watching Howard the Duck at my uncle's house. And so, Rashomon. So anyway.
What a fucking
the introduction
right
of a
there.
doctor into the story, I thought it was going to be something about him going to the doctor with Howard the Duck on his head and that being his medical issue.
Nope.
Joke, etc., etc.
It's not a joke. True story. And ever since then, my father has had a hatred for a certain H.T. Duck.
Yeah.
And so, or Howard T.D., but that makes you think it's Howard T.D. Bank, which is the full name of T.D. Bank.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't go by Howard a lot of the time.
So
because it's weird when a bank uses the first name.
Of TD Bank, so like when TD Bank goes to like the DMV,
exactly.
You have Howard
T.D. Bank. Howard Theodore Derrick Bank.
Okay, wait.
Much like J.P. Morgan Chase, which is Jesus Felipe Morgan Chase.
So wait. So it's not Howard the Duck. It is Howard. For the bank, it is Howard Theodore
Derrick Bank.
Okay.
Yes, Howard Theodore Bank. And much like HSBC is, of course, Harriet Sheila Brenda Carlisle.
Okay.
That's HSBC's full name. When these banks go to the DMV, DMV, of course, stands for David Morgan Vanderbilt. Very rich.
I trust you implicitly. After all, I read The Power Broker because of you. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Robert Caro told me all this. Anyway, so Howard the Duck. That's the story behind the film. That my dad did not get an answer to his medical problem until after my uncle watched
Wait,
it.
that's the story behind the film?
No, the story of the film is going to be next. So Howard the Duck begins almost like a film noir. It's night in the city. But what city? It seems like it's, say, New York or possibly Philadelphia or maybe Cleveland. We'll find out later. And a lonely guy is coming back to his apartment, which for some reason is decorated entirely.
Would you call it a pad?
Yes, I would. Because, as we'll find out, he's a duck. So, but first, all we see is a bunch of
thing? So much as a frog thing. That's the confusing part of that for me. Let's delve into it.
I mean,
anybody can have a pad. Like people have pads, Dan.
Okay.
Maybe it's the kind of pad he writes things down on, like you would write down on a bill. Ducks have bills. Stuart saved you. So anyway,
there's a real number 23 situation.
Exactly, where it's all around us. Okay, the apartment we should mention is entirely decorated by parody movie posters of where movies have just been replaced by ducks. Instead of Flashdance, it's Flash Duck. Instead of Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think it's Ray Ducks of the Last Ark. And it's this guy has interesting taste in movies.
I haven't seen an apartment with so many fucking movie posters since the last time I went over to Dan McCoy's house.
You can also call him Duck McCoy. Duck McCoy.
I want to correct you, though. It is actually Breeders of the Lost Stork, which just seems very strange because everything is the same about this movie, but it's about breeding, I guess.
Yes, stork breeding is very dangerous. So in our world, going to a foreign country and looking for a mystic artifact is dangerous. But in Howard the Duck's world, breeding storks is very dangerous. Although that also raised the question, so there are storks in the world. Are they also sentient or are they like our storks, which are morons?
Yeah, because I mean, if storks are sentient, then Breeders of the Lost Stork in Howard's world sounds more like a porn parody of the duck version of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Very possible. Very possible.
A lot of levels is what I'm trying.
That's a lot of levels of parody movie names there.
And there's another one that I can't remember too. That there was Breeders Lost Ark. There was Flash Duck, and there was at least one other one. The point is, it's our world, but everyone's ducks, and they're very rare.
Everything in his house is designed to let us know that this is a duck world.
He's a duck. Rolling Stone, I think, is called Rolling Duck. Like it's all.
It's Rolling Egg.
Oh, Rolling Egg. Much like the movie Flashdance here is called Flash Human in real life, and in real life the movie is Breeders of the Lost Human, and Rolling Stone is Rolling Placenta. Much like all those things.
Well, that was the thing. I was like, wait a minute, are there no stones in Howard's world?
No, all eggs.
That's to turn to a duck thing.
So he's Howard the Duck. He's a former
Yeah.
rock and roller.
Except Play Duck checks out. So you got to give it partial
Yeah, no,
credit.
Play Duck does check. He has Play. We'll get to Play Duck.
Except for, I mean, if it should probably play Mallard, maybe. I don't know.
But he could be reading the Duck World equivalent of Playgirl, Dan. I don't know.
Yeah, well, no. Here's the thing. In Duck World, they're much more comfortable with gender fluidity and kind of non-binary
That's what I wondered.
action than we are, and they're much more progressive than us in many ways. So when it's no wonder that when he goes to the human world, which is called America, when he goes to the human world, that he's disgusted and horrified by our lack of tolerance for ducks and other people that are not, people who look like the people in the movies. Okay, so he watches TV. It's all duck themed ads, which it's really like a of 80s TV right there.
I really like the editing in the scene where he pulls out his copy of Play Duck magazine. It's a porno because it comes wrapped in like newsprint. He pulls it out, and then immediately his apartment starts shaking, and I'm like, oh man, he's getting to business.
I guess so. He opens up the Play Duck centerfold. This is the first of our 2 experiences with duck memories in this movie, which raises
stacked right on top of each other.
Yeah, which raises the question: have ducks evolved beyond the need for eggs? Because here's the thing: ducks do not breastfeed their young. They're born from eggs. The egg gives them all the nutrients they need until they're developed enough to hatch. Whereas human babies they're birthed as kind of misshapen, poorly half-grown, like person bugs. Let's just call them that, or like person worms. And that's why they need milk from their mothers to survive. So in this world, we will see 2 instances of this, and it raises so many questions about duck biology, because I don't know if you guys have ever checked a duck. I did this earlier this week just to be sure. They don't have boobs.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow. Now, I'm glad that we're getting
it and like going like this and like looking underneath and going, okay.
I mean, that was the start for sure.
Okay.
Now, are you guys trying to get all this stuff up top so that this video can be filed under educational?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And up top is a great play on words when we're talking about those particular body parts. So as Stuart mentioned, the apartment starts shaking, and his easy chair that he's been sitting in, it looks a lot like the easy chair that was the one of only 3 items of furniture that was in my bachelor apartment. There was the bed, the desk, and also an easy chair that I got secondhand. It looks just like that, in case people wonder what it looks like, and they've been in my apartment from 15 years ago. But anyway, do you think you bought your easy chair because you're like, this looks like Howard the Duck? Like, it might not have been a conscious decision, but I think I didn't buy it. It was given to me by the doorman of the building because someone else had left it in their apartment and nobody wanted it. But probably.
Was it George Lucas and it was a prop from the movie Howard the Duck?
If it was, I wish I hadn't gotten rid of it. So his room starts shaking. His chair flies through the walls, going past our second example of duck memories. This, of course, is a duck who's singing to herself in the bathtub. This time we see that the duck has nipples, which is doubly strange. So it really raises the question of, 1, how is this a PG-rated movie? And 2, again, do ducks breastfeed in this world? But
this like the first presentation of a topless duck was let's call it the tasteful one, and then the second one is definitely a lingering full light shot of duck breast.
It's almost like
Dan, when you were filling out the entry in Mr. Skin, what did you
I didn't know where
in Duck World it's Mr. Feathers.
The problem is that's usually filed under actor, and I couldn't find like the name of the actor with that duck. So
it was probably like Michelle Ducker or something like that, or like Ducky or Robert, something that didn't have a lot of thought.
What you were looking for there. Anyway, let's go on.
What was it?
Let's stop talking about duck breasts.
Ducky Moore, is that what you said?
Other than delicious duck breasts.
It was probably Ducky Moore. Anyway, so he has been pulled by a laser beam, a sort of wormhole, through time and space. And a kind of Alec Guinness-esque voiceover explains to us that the cosmos is filled with many different worlds and many different dimensions. And it all starts with Howard the Duck. We will never hear this narration again, and what he's saying doesn't really apply to the story that we're about to be told. And I like it as something that I think they probably had to slap on to explain what was going on when an executive was like, wait, what? What is going on right now? Because
I still love the like faux gravitas it adds to the movie though. I'm such a sucker for that dumb bullshit.
I feel like it's one of the few bits in the movie that really works. So, but we are about to have about 6 straight minutes of the most whiplash roller coaster stuff as Howard the Duck lands in Cleveland, somehow survives being pulled through space. Maybe there was an oxygen bubble around him. I don't know. I don't understand. He's instantly beset on by a set of kind of bestial metal
it's probably
punks.
like the Rainbow Bridge is what I thought. It was, like it was like the
like the Bifrost. Yeah, okay. But again, there would be the Bill Frost because he's a duck.
Mm-hmm.
So he's immediately beset on by a bunch of punks. I remember as a kid thinking these punks were awesome and wishing there was more of them in the movie. They take him to a club where Leah Thompson's band is playing. Her band is, of course, named Cherry Bomb. Because
it's sort of a Go-Go's kind of style band. She's dressed like a Cyndi Lauper or a bangle, maybe.
Yeah, like a single bangle.
A single bangle. I mean, she's not dressed like all of the bangles at once, Elliot. That would be great.
She has one of those long poles with puppets on it on either side, so it looks like the whole bangles are there, but it's just her. Yeah. Howard gets thrown out of the club. He meets a homeless lady. He gropes a woman for some reason. This is the hero of the movie. One of several times.
Just like putting his hand behind him and accidentally.
No. He sees what's going on and he goes, "Say," and starts putting his hand on it. It's very weird. Dan, later on, he's about to bite a woman in the rear until she shoves a manila folder in his mouth. Howard, let's just face it. Howard, right off the bat, he's not a good guy. He's a bad guy. Howard's a bad guy.
Yeah.
Dan, don't defend him.
No. I mean, not that it makes any difference when it comes to butt biting. But that seemed to be like a reaction out of anger rather than a perverse reaction.
I don't know. He says he goes like, "Say," again. Like he seems really into it. Maybe I misunderstood his growl of anger.
I mean, I can't speak to his mindset.
But anyway, his motivation doesn't really enter into it. It's never okay for a duck to bite a woman.
Never okay.
Yeah, especially in a government office as they were. So anyway, he's chased down by a biker gang of ladies that they're
how many times on this podcast have you had to make Dan admit that it's never okay for a duck to bite a woman on the rear?
How many times?
Listeners know. If I had a nickel for every time
podcast or just the
we could bail out everyone in this country who needed it if I was getting paid for that. Yeah. He's chased down by the Satan Sluts biker gang as their leather jacket. There's the one I had to check. We are 9 minutes into the movie, and there's been about 5 or 6 minutes of just Howard being tossed from one place to another, and you having to catch your bearings. And at this point, I'm like, hey, at least the movie's got energy. Don't worry, it's going to run out of that. So we meet Beverly Switzler, Leah Thompson's character. This is a character from the comic book. She is leaving her show. She's attacked in the alley by those punks, and Howard threatens them and fights them off using, you guessed it, quack foo. This is from the original source material. And
master of quack foo. This is
quack foo.
The closest thing to a power that Howard the Duck as a comics character has.
Other than being
Dan, can you guys describe kind of what the martial arts style of quack foo looks like in practice?
I think it's kind of like if kung fu was done by Curly from the Three Stooges, except
so a lot
Curly
of
the Duck.
Okay. There's a lot of object work.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of also sort of like gearing up to run, maybe down like a bar or something, and
there's a lot of Jackie Chan-esque object work and a lot of improvisational moves. Maybe there's a kind of capoeira influence because it's very rhythmic. In the comic, there's a story where he's kind of disgusted by the way that at the time kung fu movies were really big. And he's kind of disgusted how all these young people really want to learn how to fight. But they're not interested in the philosophy behind it. And I remember at the time being like, oh, that's a pretty cool take on Kung Fu. But here it's just a thing for him to be like, get ready to eat some Bill.
I feel like because we have just shortly, you can see all the bits that Elliot does. This is the stuff you can't get on the podcast. This is the time to mention a little bit about Howard behind the camera. Not as a director, but off screen, let's say.
Because I think he never finished that one film he was working on, which is called Duckbusters, I think.
Yeah. Wait, you're thinking of Daffy Duck's Quackbusters, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, Dan. Exactly. I think Howard the Duck directed that.
Why not?
I think that a package film in which they took several pre-existing Warner Brothers cartoons and added the minimum amount of material required to make it into a feature that I don't even know if it was released in theaters. I think Howard the Duck, a fictional character, directed that. But thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
I prefer Daffy Duck's Presents Fantastic Island. But anyway.
I love that one.
Okay, sorry, Dan. I retract that joke. Yeah, his movie was called Duck's Boot. There you go.
Okay. Well, anyway, I was just going to say that, so Howard the Duck, obviously not a real duck, an animatronic sort of puppet, a suit that is worn by a little person, an actor who, among other things, did a lot of the Chucky stunts for the Child's Play movies, is the main person in the suit, and the voice is Chip Zien, who was the original Baker on the Broadway production of Into the Woods. He's much better in Into the Woods than he is here.
Let's just say he's working with better material in that one.
And they cast.
That's not a controversial statement.
They cast the voice after the movie was already in editing, so they had a lot of trouble apparently matching the voice to the puppeteering that had already been done.
I mean, that would explain why his quips are kind of pretty lackluster. He's constantly has this stream of like half wisecracks. And let me tell you, the ideal version of this character is Michael J. Fox from the 1980s, but he's a duck.
Mm-hmm.
And they failed to capture that. Again, Michael J. Fox is a fox, so they're working at it with a handicap already to begin with. They should have picked a guy like David Duchovny, and his name sounds kind of like Duck.
How long do you think they had to argue with executives when they were casting Teen Wolf, where they're like, yeah, we think the lead character who's a werewolf should be played by Michael J. Fox, and the executive's like, but wait a minute, you just said he's a fox. How can he be a wolf too? And they're like, okay, let's go back to the beginning.
I think probably they spent a lot of time on that. That was what held up that movie for a while.
Yeah, I actually had a question while watching this. I was like, I wonder how old Howard is supposed to be, because in the comics, I always got the feeling that he was kind of a world-weary character.
Yeah.
Like maybe he was world-weary before his time. I don't know, but like I got the impression
Dan McCoy, if you will.
Maybe he was a middle-aged duck or an early middle-aged duck. Now, the only information I could find is that the Howard of the movie is supposed to be 27. But even on Marvel.com, there was no age given for Howard. So,
well, looks like a story needs to be written to explain when Howard the Duck was born, or hatched, as I would say, because he's a duck. Unless again, duck biology has evolved to the point where we don't
know for sure. So, how old is Beverly supposed to be?
She's supposed to be in her early 20s, I have to assume, early to mid 20s, because she's like, she's young, she's in a band.
She's Leah Thompson age.
That's true.
She's probably around the same age as Leah Thompson when she made it, since it's Leah Thompson. So anyway, Beverly has sympathy with Howard, and he just defended her, so she takes him back to her apartment, and it's one of those like movie apartments that's an enormous loft, and you're like, oh, this is the kind of thing you could get for cheap back then, but now it would be so expensive. Beverly, hold on to it. Buy the building. That would be my advice.
There's two kind of apartments in the 80s. Sadly, they're gendered. You have a woman's apartment, which basically looks like a showcase from a vintage store in a vintage shop in like Asbury, New Jersey.
And no matter how
you have a man's,
I said, no matter how old, there's usually stuffed animals around
everywhere. Yeah, and like a very cool vanity.
Yes.
Or if it's a man's apartment, it is a empty loft except for draped curtains and like a wooden martial arts training dummy, but like not one that comes alive.
Yeah.
Like not one of those wooden training dummies that you have to fight in Tekken that comes alive and has all the moves. No, it sits there. He maybe like he battles it every once in a while he's practicing his kata.
Unless it's a rich guy, in which case he's got an ultra modern apartment that he can look out over the city from, wearing like just silk pajama bottoms and a silk robe with no shirt over it. And he's always got like a tumbler in his hand. And you don't see him make the drink, but you know somebody probably made it for him, or maybe he did.
Robo Butler.
Yeah, exactly. It's Robo Butler, much like in Rocky 4. Yeah, exactly. Is it Rocky 3? Rocky has the Robo Butler in it.
It's Rocky 4. Paulie, it serves Paulie the drinks.
Yeah. So I guess, would Lobot be considered a robot butler? He's a cyborg, but
wait,
Dan, you're the expert at Star Wars.
Why Lobot specifically? Because it stands for Low Bottler. Like I don't.
No, because he is always Bottler. Because he's always following Lando around and doing his bidding and kind of doing errands for him. Like
I forgot who Lobot was for a second. I mean, isn't he just a cyborg? I always kind of assumed that was just like the equivalent of having one of those headsets for your
okay, so it's just a personal assistant who has a PDA in his head.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You're saying it's like he's got one of those one of those like, I don't care.
Now,
it's like is that like the Star Wars equivalent of having like a cell phone holster on your pocket, like on your waist?
Probably. It looks real old fashioned. It looked really cool when he first got it, And then like 10, 15 years later, everyone's like, ugh, look at this guy with the computer around his skull. Just get a chip. Yeah.
Yeah, he got that because he's like, I want everyone to know that I got my first real management job.
Now, Rosie from the Jetsons is a maid, but not a butler. Is the difference that she doesn't answer the door?
Does she not answer the door?
I don't know. You're the Jetsons freak.
No.
You're always talking about Jetsons.
Yeah. We just got Boomerang in the house, and
don't throw it in the house, Dan. Go outside.
Yeah.
If you're gonna break things.
Audrey was very distressed. I didn't want to watch a pup named Scooby-Doo. I'm like, you can have it on. It's fine. I don't.
Generation gap. Anyway, so it's that Howard is there. It's kind of very awkward. We find out he's a failed musician. He was in a band called Howard and the Heartbreakers. Now he's an ad copywriter, which in the 1980s was almost the most soulless job that you could get if you worked in advertising. Yeah. Beverly goes through his wallets while he's sleeping and finds a $1 bill with a very poorly added duck bill on the George Washington, and some pictures that also look very fake. They look like Photoshopped family photos, and it's like, just get the people in the costumes and take a picture. Like, come on, guys. It's not that hard. Anyway, and also a condom. And she goes, Howard?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
wait, this is not a spiral condom.
No, that's what I was going to ask about. Yes,
Yeah.
It seems like it's a normal human-shaped one and not one for duck equipment.
You're using the term normal, and I feel like that is a misnomer because it's just an unwrapped condom in a wallet.
Well, honestly, that's the weirder part.
Yeah, that it's unwrapped.
That it's an unwrapped condom. Yeah, that he's holding in a wallet. Because, like, I guess
maybe on the
you have a spiral penis, like a regular condom, you could probably use in a spiral manner. But
so Dan's talking about spiral penises.
Yeah,
and sure. We just need to clarify for our listeners or watchers or whatever that ducks. You can look it up, Google it. Ducks have a ballistic spiral penis. Yeah, you can Google. Just hit do the image search for duck penis.
So Dan,
it is. What I find far more interesting is that duck vaginas are like labyrinths filled with like dead ends and traps and shit.
Yeah, and you have to answer 3 riddles at the end.
There's parts of it that are like that, dude.
Yeah. There's treasure. There's Golob or Shalob, the spider goddess.
There's a duck David Bowie that lives inside them.
That's does a lot of duck juggling with glass globes. Yeah.
And you have to determine whether or not he's like tricking you or not. And then like there's a part where you're like, is he hitting on me? And you're like, probably, but I'm like a kid.
Yeah. But a lot of duck women came of age looking at Duck David Bowie's spiral penis beneath
the movie. Now the hardest part is that at the end, when it's at the end of the labyrinth inside the female duck, there's 2 people guarding the door to the egg, and one always tells the truth and one always tells a lie, and you have to figure out from them which is the right way to go. And no duck has ever been able to figure out that riddle, and that's why ducks are extinct. Now moving on, Leah Thompson.
I knew we were going to talk about duck penises. I'm surprised at the amount of talk about duck vaginas. We're really branching out.
Yeah, equal opportunity. I guess we're pretty woke, Dan, or as they would say on Duck World, very quack. So anyway, Bev is instantly enamored of him, as you would any guy who you find an unwrapped condom in his wallet. She takes Howard to the Natural History Museum to meet her bandmate's boyfriend, Phil, played by Tim Robbins. He's a scientist, and Tim Robbins is really playing the hell out of this character. He is like Jerry Lewising up the whole time, and I was really enjoying it because
that's gotta be the fucking direction.
No, all I imagined was him being like, I'm in the dumbest movie ever made. I'm gonna have some fun. Like, I am definitely gonna do this as big as possible. He's a real kook, but he explains duck evolution to them, which is surprisingly like human evolution. He doesn't talk about the name or anything. Howard is rude to everyone. He's very rude. And he tells Beverly to buzz off. Phil is only interested because he wants to be famous. He thinks this is the discovery that's going to make his career. And Bev,
I think he even says, this is my ticket to my own museum.
Yes.
And I'm like, is that what scientists are trying to do?
Apparently that's the dream of every scientist, to own their own museum.
Own your own, because then you're working for yourself, 100% profit.
That's exactly like the way a little kid would think being a scientist is. Right? It's like when our friend made this comment about our friend Matt was talking about the movie Highlander, and he was like, when I was a kid watching Highlander, of course this guy goes to wrestling matches by himself. Of course this guy course, this guy lives alone in an antique shop. Like, that's what adults do. That's what cool stuff happens.
Yeah. Kids don't know anything about adults. So he's rude to everybody. Beverly, this is the other big nod to the comic moment where she says, "I know you're trapped in a world you never made," which was the Howard the Duck slogan that was on the cover of the comics. They trapped in a world he never made. I've never understood the slogan. I still don't. I like it, but it's like he didn't make his own world either. He's not God. I don't understand. So it's a slogan I've never fully understood.
Is it like making the scene? Like, is it like old style? Like,
oh, maybe, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, he was originally Howard the Bee's knees. Yeah. Just the knees of the bee. But he wore cat pajamas. Anyway, now we enter the most inexplicable sequence in the film where Howard has to make it on his own because he and Bev have had a falling out. He goes to get a job, goes to the employment office, and there are two people have two reactions to Howard in this movie. One, they're like, "This is a duck person, that's crazy." And two, they go, "This is some dude in a costume. I'm just gonna roll in it and not even comment on it if I can get by without it."
Yeah, like I feel like for some people, like the scales fall from their eyes and they see the like cosmic strangeness of the universe and see Howard for who he really is, and they just lose it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, he looks like a man in a duck suit because he is a man in a duck suit. Yeah. So you watch most of the movie being like, oh, the rational people are the people who are just reacting to him as if he's a man in a duck suit.
He does because,
like, this is Cleveland. It's not like a huge city, but they're in a city where people see weird things in cities, and they're like, whatever. Duckman.
Yeah, I mean, it's a city because
Duckman is a different character.
Yes.
A much funnier adaptation of a comic book, but that goes without
saying. You can tell it's a city in the 80s because at night there's just like steam pouring out of like every nook and cranny.
Yeah, you can just hear the saxophone, and there only two lights that you see at night are either harsh reds or cool blues. That's the 80s.
Hell yeah.
That was back in the 80s, that was before like all these trade agreements decimated the American steam industry, where we just were manufacturing steam out of every manhole.
I mean, there's still steam pouring out of manholes in New York. That's how much of the city is heated. You just saw more of it, I think, in 80s.
I don't know. I haven't been outside for a long time, so it's not happening.
Very fair point.
And
it's all heated by dragon's breath now.
And there's that promotional music video for Steam by Peter Gabriel.
Yeah, that was brought to you by the Steam Council. At the end of it, he goes, "Give me steam," brought to you by the Steam Council, and let me see the way you feel. Yeah, that's much like his earlier hit, "I Wanna Be Your Sledgehammer," brought to you by Derrickson Sledgehammers. Derrickson, when you need a sledgehammer, don't buy any other brand of sledgehammer. Sledge.
Oh, wow.
Derrickson Sledgehammers, a subsidiary of Sunbolt. Sunbolt is it's a larger hardware company. Yeah. Anyway, so Howard goes to get a job. He goes to the government employment office where he meets a woman whose butt he almost bites. She gets him a job. Dan, can you explain this place, please? He's a janitor.
You mean Dan's retirement plan?
It is even for me, it's gross. It seems like some sort of sex spa.
That's exactly the phrase I would have used to describe it.
Yeah, it is not like a seedy massage parlor where you might go to like get a hand job, say. I don't think that's what they're putting across. It seems to be, from what happens in there, just a place where people go to make out in hot tubs.
Yeah.
But also it's gross.
And the bigger question is, how did this get a PG rating? I mean, the PG-13 rating, I don't know if it existed at the time yet, but it is.
Well, I mean, at the time,
yes, that was one of the biggest industries in the country at the time, and it employed more people than the auto industry. I was looking up the facts, but still.
But I mean, this is pre-PG-13, I believe, right?
Pre-PG-13, pre-PG-13.
Yeah, so you had movies like, for instance, I remember Sheena being shown a lot during the day on HBO, and that had a lengthy Tanya Roberts bathing nude in a pool scene in it. And so this is just they didn't know what to do back in the old days when it came to the PG. It was
they were like, this isn't an R-rated movie because no one's intestines are exploding out of their bodies.
Exactly.
So
there's only 2 shots of duck breasts in this, and only
I feel like
bestiality. So
It's only
I
implied.
feel like that asks the bigger question, which is this movie for kids, or is Howard the Duck, like John Boyega, not here for them kids?
It's hard to say. I mean, like I didn't know whether we were going to get to it yet, but why not? Like, one of the big problems with this movie is like you don't know who it's for.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I love about it in a certain way, just from like the stance of a disaster. But you're like, okay, well, this has too much silliness and too much of a ridiculous like duck costume to be for adults. But there's definitely like too many duck breasts and condoms and sex spas for it to be for kids.
It's totally inappropriate for children because of its subject matter, and for adults because it's terrible.
Yeah, and this is a thing that like the comics could get by with better, because like the vibe of the comics could be just like whatever, like
well,
all
no, but
kinds
the comics were never as explicit as the movie is.
that is where you're wrong, sir.
Nope.
The Howard the Duck comic eventually went into a black and white magazine form.
But that I would not call that a comic, Dan. I would call that a magazine, because
okay,
I go by the Comics Code definition of the periodicals, sir.
Okay, but it was the same character put out by the same company. And at a magazine format.
Sir, I'd like to speak to your supervisor, sir. Sir, I think that's Stuart. Stuart, you're his supervisor. I'd like to talk to you about this.
You're my supervisor, Stuart.
Yeah. Okay, I got a lot on my plate. What's going on?
Okay, I know you have a lot on your plate. That kielbasa breakfast looks delicious, and I'll let you get back to it in just a moment. But I was talking to your employee, I suppose, Dan, I think his name tag said.
I'm here. I'm
McCoy. Ugh.
And he very offensively assumed I was not familiar with the history of the Howard the Duck character, and thought that when I said comic book, I meant the entire oeuvre of the character in his universe, when in fact I very specifically meant the comic itself and not the black and white magazine, which is outside the purview of the discussion at the moment. He could have brought it into the purview.
I mean, it's the same character put out by the same publishing company, just under a different.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, if I can speak, that's like saying Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the same as Fury Max from the Marvel Max imprint, and they are very different characters. One is canon, one is not. So, Stuart, I would hope that you could discipline Dan in the way that seems fairest to you. I'm not saying he should lose his job, but I'm not saying that. So, if you excuse me,
should would giving him a demerit satisfy you?
Do you work on a kind of demerit system, or is that something you're inventing now? What's the practical application of this?
I feel like your question means, how about 2 demerits?
Okay, now we're talking. Yes,
I will take demerits if I'm just allowed to say that in the black and white magazine, I am very familiar with as like a kid who was a heterosexual male who grew up before pornography was readily available. I remember raiding copies of the black and white magazine from my older brothers and seeing that in that magazine there would frequently be nudity, and that the relationship between Howard and Beverly was definitely a actual relationship.
I'm only talking about the comic books where they did have an actual relationship, but occasionally Kiss would show up.
Yeah.
And that was the most extreme thing that happened.
So all we can say that the movie is a lot more circumspect than any version of Howard the Duck in the comics as to what the relationship between Howard and Beverly is, even though she seems totally into him from the moment he arrives in her life.
Seems like that's the one place where the movie is squeamish, where everywhere else it should be squeamish. It is not. Okay, moving along. Howard quits that job, obviously, making you, the viewer, wondering, why did I sit through that? He is now walking the streets of Cleveland, homeless. He gets scared by a news report about duck hunting that he sees on a TV. And
a cartoon of Daffy Duck being crushed by anvils and stuff.
Yeah, and he finds the club where Cherry Bomb, Bev's band, is still playing. He gets into a fight with Bev's corrupt slimeball manager, pins him to the bar with an ice pick through his earring. This duck is not messing around and threatens him and says, "Hey, you're no longer their manager. Give me their money." And then he threatens the crowd with space rabies to get them to back away. And it's one of many times when it's like, so does everyone know he's an alien? Like, is that something that's assumed?
Yeah.
I do also want to say, as long as we're talking about the relationship that Howard has with Beverly, like, it makes sense that she's immediately drawn to him, because this is apparently a world where all other men in it are about to be infected by an alien villain, demon lord, are stupid, as Filzy is, or seem like moments away from trying to assault Beverly.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
all other men are bad options, so it makes sense that she's like, oh, this duck's not so bad.
I mean, you're
you're saying that the screenwriter was like, okay, I gotta lower the bar more to make Howard more appealing.
Yeah, and also you hurt yourself by setting it in Cleveland, where everybody is basically like that. So anyway, Howard goes backstage. He makes up with Bev. He meets Bev's band. Filzy shows up, and Howard's
including Holly Robinson Pete.
Yeah. Okay. Phil Phil is talking crazy. He's like, I think I figured out how you got here. You were buried here for thousands of years. He's just tossing out theories, and he steals one of Howard's feathers for analysis. Back to Beverly's apartment. Howard is wearing a little pajamas and little robe, which it's like, why does Bev have a full wardrobe that fits Howard at her apartment?
And
at least show that she owns a My Buddy doll that she dresses up.
Yeah, and he finds her like synthesizer, and he starts fucking around on it. And I think, I mean, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we hear some early strains of the song that we hear in full later, Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck.
That Cherry Bomb plays, which is like most popular rock bands, has a song about their manager who's a duck.
Well, I mean, the manager is a duck, so that's an interesting thing they can play off.
And ducks are a natural subject matter for rock and roll songs, in songs such as Rock Around the Duck.
Keep on quacking in the free world.
Yeah, Keep on Quacking in the Free Lake. Great Falls of Ducks.
Duck You by CeeLo Duck.
Yeah, Highway to Duck. We Didn't Start the Duck Fire.
Yep. Do you think this movie would have been better?
And of course, Alanis Morissette's You Ought to Duck. Anyway, you're saying still.
Do you think this movie would have been better if every scene where like Howard and Beverly were walking around and they saw stuff in the world, Howard would be like, oh yeah, we got that back in my world, but it's called, I don't know, like Fed Duck or like
we have this
Duck Express or something.
It's called Duck Donald's. Yeah, we have those too. And
you remind me of something though, that speaking of this last scene, like Howard, like before he plays with the synthesizer, he hits the drum machine and seems surprised by it going off. And I'm like, okay, well,
like he's fucking Gizmo or something.
Planet is just duck versions of exactly what we have on our planet, but apparently you don't have drum machines.
Because on his planet,
there are ducks and there's drum machines.
On his planet, the drum machine makes quacking noises. It's like quack, 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 quack. Yeah. And
that's actually
Lars Ulrich is called Lars Duck. It's what?
You actually just sang the fucking melody to Howard the Duck.
Yeah, exactly. That's the song. Which, skipping ahead to the end for a moment, when I was a kid, I thought was super cool that he has a song about him and he can play guitar. And why not? It's produced by Thomas Dolby. All the original songs in the soundtrack.
I mean, the songs are great. I looked up to see whether the soundtrack was available. It's all like, you have to pay like $80 to get the original soundtrack. Although you can get a used single of the title song, Howard the Duck, for $5. So
okay, worth it. There you go. That's Dan's pick of the week. So his dance is jamming there. Bev wants Howard to be her new manager, and he leers at her. She's getting ready for bed. She invites him. She hits on him.
And by getting ready for bed, she disrobes like 4 layers of pajamas.
He hits on her, but then when she responds positively, he gets nervous and says it's a joke. And they're about to fall asleep. But then who rushes in but Phil and 2 scientists, Carter and Dr. Jennings. And so Carter, I don't remember the actor who plays him. Dr. Jennings is played by Jeffrey Jones. And
Dan's favorite actor.
Dan's favorite actor, less for his acting and more for his personality.
Do not put any of that on me. Let's acknowledge that Jeffrey Jones is a sex offender and not talk about it anymore.
Okay, and we won't get into it any further. They have one of Howard's feathers. It turns out Dr. Jennings is the head of the laser spectroscope program. It was supposed to be, I don't know, doing something. But when they turned it on, it was deviated and pulled by an unknown force. And that brought Howard to Earth, and one of his feathers landed in the lab, even though Howard and his chair landed halfway across Cleveland. And they get to watch video of it. And the video is it's such a laid back crisis. Everyone's, I guess, running away from this exploding laser, but they're doing it in kind of a fairly non-rushed way. And I thought that was really funny. Mm-hmm. Dr. Jennings says they can send him back if they reverse the beam, but it has to be done tonight. Spoiler alert, they actually managed to accomplish it the next day, pretty much. So it didn't have to be done tonight. And Phil is like, no, don't go back to your home planet.
Maybe he just had like a party the next night and he didn't want to. Like, it's got to do tonight.
We've got to do it tonight because tomorrow I've got some things planned. Anyway,
tomorrow there's an episode of Cheers I got to watch on there.
It's my mom's birthday, and I told her I'd take her out to Bennigan's. I'm not that cheap. I want to take her out to a fancy restaurant. She just likes Bennigan's. I don't get it either, but that's where she wanted to go. And then we're going to go to TCBY, which is her favorite place to go for dessert. Again, I wanted to get her something nicer, but she wanted Bennigan's. She wanted TCBY. It's not my day. It's her day.
Is it because TCBY ends in a question?
The country's best yogurt? You mean TGI Fridays? That doesn't end in a question either.
Do I live in a question? I'm just accepting what Stuart says at face value, but I'm realizing now maybe I shouldn't.
No.
TCB, why?
Oh,
I see. Yeah.
So Bev and Howard, they're tearful about saying goodbye on their way back to the lab. After all, they've known each other for a day. At the lab, again, they get there. The laser is exploding. More people mildly running from the laser. It's kind of just spraying sparks everywhere. And who's going to show up to tell them that Jennings has disappeared in the time it took them to get there? That's right, David Paymer.
That's great. I'm a sucker for
Paymer. I'm a big fan of his.
I'm a sucker for like introducing like our heroes showing up and everything's just a mess, and they're like, okay, well, we're just going to keep walking deeper into this catastrophe.
The police show up and, not surprisingly, make a bigger mess of the whole thing. They immediately seem to think that Howard is the problem, and they take him away, force him to try to take off his costume, which involves an illegal strip search. They arrest him for being an alien. He goes, what are we going to arrest him for? For being an illegal alien. And the cop pauses for everyone in the audience to just laugh their heads off at that one.
Well, so many guts were busted when this movie was in theaters. Like, that was the reason it was a flop. It was a flop because like people were medically warned to stay home.
There's a thing called HGD, Howard's duck disease, in which your guts bust, your sides actually split, and your knee breaks from being slapped so hard because you're laughing so much. And that was the problem. And they actually went in after the fact for the video release, which is what we saw, and dehumorized it to make all these incredibly hilarious jokes less funny. In order to, they did it as a public service, and we should commend them for it. The cops, Beverly and Howard managed to get away from an idiotic cop by throwing a cigar into a garbage can, forcing him to stick his head into it to put the fire out, I guess, and then they just take his gun and push him over. The police, as they overhear them saying, shoot to kill, which is crazy. One, the duck head, again, we've seen so much from the police lately. It's not that hard to believe they would want to shoot a duck, partly because ducks are delicious. Why not? But it seems weird for the response to a duck or a person in a duck costume showing up at an emergency to suddenly be that they have to murder him on site.
It's almost like the police are ill-suited for the task they're given, and that maybe we should be dedicating the money to them toward, I don't know, social programs or some other kind of a response that might be more effective. Who knows?
Go to flophousepodcast.com to donate to charity.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Bev and Howard, they find a confused Dr. Jennings who says he blacked out when the spectroscope malfunctioned, and he keeps groaning in pain. They all drive off in his car. For some reason, he's the one driving. Even though he is flashing through pain and has headaches flashing and is driving them off the road and all around, they never say, how about, Bev is never like, why don't you let me drive? And I can only assume it's because she does not know how to drive. Howard, of course, is not tall enough to hit the gas pedal. They could have had a hilarious scene where Howard is steering while Bev is trying to hit the gas pedals, but instead they let Dr. Jennings, a man who, as we learn later, is being eaten away from the inside by an extra-dimensional monster, they allow him to drive. Stuart, you have the floor.
There was a night when I was in high school where a friend of mine, I watched him put 7 tabs of acid on his tongue, and then we drove around for a while. But at least I was a fucking kid. Like, Howard is what, 50? Like, come on, you should know better.
I from context clues, I assume this is true, but this was the driver took 7 tabs of acid.
Yeah, it was a huge mistake.
Jesus Christ, Stuart.
Now, Dan, luckily,
I wasn't the driver. I was just a passenger.
God bless you. I'm glad you're alive.
Stuart was sitting there in the car going, this is a mistake. I wouldn't do that.
My arms are crossed, and I was like, can you just turn the KMFDM album up louder so I don't have to deal with you?
Now, the police are technically after our heroes, but they're not chasing them. So what we see is not a car chase. It's just someone who is incapable of driving properly, endangering his passengers repeatedly, as he explains to them that something evil came through the laser beam. He feels like he's transforming from the inside. And I wondered, what does that feel like? Like there's a Flash comic from the Silver Age where he's turned into a marionette, and he says, it feels like I've been turned into a giant puppet. And the question is, of course, what does that feel like to suddenly realize that you're a puppet, to know it? So what does it feel like to be transformed from the inside? Dan, you've had plenty of medical problems. What does it feel like? Or Stuart, maybe it's how you felt when you were sick recently during the pandemic. Is that what it was like? Oh,
that's true. No, I was mainly tired and scared. There was a time when I had food poisoning where I'm like, maybe I'm transforming into something other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And were you?
I mean, but I'd also climbed out of that teleportation pod with where I teleported myself with a fly.
Oh, okay.
Because I was like, wouldn't it be hilarious if me and this fly, like, what would that fly think happened?
Wouldn't that be hilarious? Indeed. Yeah, no, when my knee went out, I got a cadaver graft in my knee.
Oh wow. So like they put a tiny corpse inside your knee?
Tiny corpse inside me. It's crazy.
Wow.
They had to interspace shrink the corpse down, and they put it in my knee. I'm like, doctor, what is this going to do? And he's like, I don't know. Like,
oh wow.
That's what science is, he said.
I mean,
he said it's just checking what things, like we've never put a corpse in a knee. See what happens.
The only doctor who could afford your insurance was Dr. Giggles, so it all checks out.
Yeah, Dr. Giggles and his consulting doctor, Dr. Nick from The Simpsons.
No, but they put like a dead person's thing in my knee, but
a dead person's thing.
Yeah. Transform me into a killer or anything. It just created scaffolding.
Killer knee. Now your knee has a drive to murder, but it's just a knee, so it can't really do anything. Yeah. He says something is growing inside me, replicating and superseding all of my internal organs. Again, I wonder what it feels like. Don't want to experience it. Wonder what it feels like. After some wild driving, they managed to stop short right at the window of a roadside diner, Joe Roma's Cajun Sushi, which is a sort of Italian Cajun sushi diner, which as a kid, I did not recognize that was the joke, that it's this extreme fusion restaurant.
Well, and also I think that there's a little bit of context here in that this was the 80s when the idea of sushi was the most hilarious thing in the world.
Yeah, sushi was very new and very fun. I mean, Japan and Japanese people in the 80s were somehow inexplicably hilarious in movies, and it's hard for me to put myself in the mindset where you see a Japanese person and you're just like, uh-oh, jokes are coming.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid watching this. I grew up in a smaller town, and I was like, only in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. Only slightly outside of Cleveland.
You're like, oh man, I bet Drew Carey's enjoying that sushi right now.
I didn't say that because I was a kid and Drew Carey didn't exist yet. I mean,
he did exist. He just wasn't on TV yet, but he does.
Yeah, I didn't like see him. He wasn't like in my hometown.
Like where?
Yeah, there was no Facebook or nothing.
Okay. Are you guys Facebook friends now, or?
Yeah, we text every once in a while. He seemed very uncomfortable the other night.
Oh, that's too bad. Everything okay?
Oh, I don't know. I think he was uncomfortable at the charity that RuPaul chose on the charity Price is Right episode they did.
Oh, okay.
It was pretty great.
I want to say we're about to meet my favorite character in the movie.
That's right, the waitress.
The waitress, who is great, and I looked her up. She does not have many acting credits, but you know what she did? She invented something that I actually realized. I was just going to tell you what it is, but I realized just now that I have it across from me. So I'm going to get this.
Okay, see you later, Dan. Finally.
I'm glad Dan felt this way, because this waitress is the most genuinely funny character in the whole movie, I think.
She's super good. And I was like, why doesn't she have a career? But like, apparently she became an entrepreneur. Her partner and her started a company, and one of the things that she invented is this thing that I got from my parents for Christmas in like a stocking this year. The thing that you do this with to your head to massage it.
Dan's gonna fuck up his cool hair.
Yeah.
But
that's a little time on this, but
that's amazing, and it's a shame for movies, because that scene where they're sitting at a booth and she is having conversation with both Bev about what they're going to order and with Dr. Jennings, who is turning into a monster, and she's getting mixed up between the conversations, is the fun. Like, that's the scene where I'm like, if the whole movie was like this would be a really successful movie. Just creatively.
I feel like it's about halfway through the movie that that the accident happens and Jennings starts turning into a monster,
Mhm.
and it's such like a turn, like like Audition.
Yeah.
But it's like, as a kid, I was like, wait, the first half of the movie was one way and the second half is completely different. And I feel like a lot of that is owed to this like weird monster showing up all of a sudden and these various characters playing off each other.
It's the
And
kind of
I like the second half of this movie quite a bit.
it's the,
Well,
the
except for
storyline-
the long plane thing.
the
But
the plane
storyline.
thing is
We'll
terrible.
get to the plane. The storyline. Well, at this point, the storyline becomes so much more like the comics would be, where they would be involved with like Lovecraftian monsters, or they're going into outer space and stuff. And it feels really strange to see it in a big budget movie. It's the kind of thing you'd expect from like a lower budget 80s movie, but it does. This part works better for me too, but it's because I love slimy monsters and the whole time. Like this whole scene, Jeffrey Jones has what's essentially a broken up monologue about how he's now one of the dark overlords of the universe from the Nexus of Somnus, a region of exiled demons, which the computer that controls the spectroscope is aware of, because later on the screen it says targeting Nexus of Somnus, and I was like, is that a real place?
Yeah.
But the movie picks up a weirdness that it was missing from the beginning.
I feel like the strange thing is like I feel kind of the opposite from you guys, in that like for the first 30 minutes of this movie, I'm like, and I think this has happened to me before. Like I've watched this movie more times than anyone should ever watch Howard the Duck. And every time I revisit it, I'm like, oh, this isn't so bad at the beginning. And then I get so bored actually when like the plot kicks in, other than the fact that like Jeffrey Jones slowly turning into a monster is funny, and like the monster effects at the very end are amazing and cool.
I think all the makeup effects are great.
Yeah, I feel like though, like the movie like weirdly slows down when there starts to be a plot, because I don't know. I read a review of the time. I think it might have even been the New York Times that said like
a review of Morris Day in the Time.
Yeah, of Morris Day in the Time, in the Times, and it said that like once the plot kicks in, like Howard sort of stops being at the center of his own story, which I think is true.
Well, I think the problem is that Howard is not very interesting or funny. He is not an entertaining character in this movie. In the comics, he is, but here he's not. So at this, once Dr. Janning comes in and starts turning into a monster, I don't think they pull it off amazingly, but I at least am like, okay, now there's something interesting going on in the movie, as opposed to before when it was a wisecracking but not particularly funny or charismatic duck just bopping around Cleveland, just kind of doing nothing, going nowhere, And
I can't stress enough how much I love the weird like lightning effects they have on him, where it's like clearly drawn on the fucking the film. It's great.
Yeah.
All the laser effects are beautiful. Like the laser effects and lightning effects and the flame effects are all gorgeous, except for one shot at the very end. But like it's just like all this old school effects lasers, which are great.
This is the old person's corner of the Flophouse where we
well, like they don't do lasers like they used to.
Yeah, unlike the earlier parts that were super accessible to the fucking TikTok teens.
Yeah.
So long story short, Howard gets in trouble in the diner because some truckers start irritating them for no reason, and Janning, to get the code key to the laser spectroscope, blows up the whole place, and he's really enjoying just having a ball blowing things up with his eye beams and hand lasers. Eventually they all have to leave, of course. He traps Beverly and takes her, and leaves Howard behind, right? He takes a truck and he says, I'm going to use your body as an incubator for more overlords. And once again, his driving is terrible. But at least at this point, we know that he's a demon lord from another dimension who is inhabiting a human body.
Well, I also want to say that like earlier in the scenes, as he's turning into this demon lord, no one seems to notice, which at the beginning is kind of a funny joke that like he's just like acting crazy and they're like, all right, well, we'll just roll with this. But then he starts talking about being like this demon lord from outer space, and they are inexplicably like they dismiss it out of hand. And it's like, you're talking like Howard came from space. Why do you think that it's weird that another thing came down in the same machine and possessed this guy? Why do you not believe this thing?
I mean, you can believe in ghosts and not believe in aliens.
I guess
thanks,
right,
Agent Mulder.
I guess I can think of it that way.
This has also the great moment where it's introduced that he needs power. This demon body, this overlord needs power. And so a tentacle comes out of his mouth and plugs itself into the truck's lighter socket. And it's this real gross, slimy, rubbery prop tentacle. And I love that tentacle.
I do want to
Not
say
since
also,
Large Marge have we had such a great gross out in a truck cab.
before we leave this multi-cuisine diner, I do want to say one more thing, which is like Howard wigs out when he served eggs at the diner, as one might if one was a duck. But that leads to the interesting question: do they eat people on Howard's planet?
I think people
Good
just
question.
never evolved. I think it's still just apes.
So do they eat apes on Howard's planet?
Yes, they eat apes,
Probably, yeah.
and ape fries, which is just ape meat that's just been fried up in kind of like a slaw, like an ape meat slaw. Yeah.
I mean, they
It's like a
definitely
confit?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's not what that is at all.
they eat grape ape there, which is just ape with a nice grape sauce.
Yeah. It's ape a la grape. Yeah, that's what it's called. But it also raises the question again: how do these ducks reproduce? We get a lot of mixed signals from this movie about it, but we don't have time to talk about that because the cops show up at the diner. Phil is in the back seat of the cop car, handcuffed. For some reason, they took him from one crime scene to a different crime scene, not knowing the two are related necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they got reports of a duck man who was there or a man duck, but it seems strange that they hadn't. Again, this is the police not doing their job, that they haven't had him call his lawyer. They haven't put him through the system yet. He has just been sitting in the back of a cop car for hours with his handcuffs on.
I mean, if they got a report of a Duckman, they probably would rush there because, as we've addressed earlier, Duckman is funnier and more interesting than Howard the Duck.
It's a great show. It's a show.
Have we talked about the fact that Howard the Duck's last name is Duck? Like, is that a super common last name on his world?
It's the Jabba the Hutt problem all over again.
No. It's not the same problem at all. Jabba the Hutt's last name is not the Hutt.
It's like Yorba the Greek, right?
But everyone calls him that.
Everyone
calls
him
that.
that.
Apparently just his species, as we see later on, is the Hutt. Like, it makes more sense here because people are like, oh, Howard the Duck. Like, there aren't other Duckmen walking
but
around.
on Duckworld, what's his last name? What's his last name on Duckworld?
All right, well then that's whatever.
I mean, Michael Mann exists, right?
That's true. Michael Mann does exist.
Michael Mann does exist. We've proven it scientifically. Yeah.
Do you think
for a long time he was a legend?
Make a sequel to this movie where Michael Mann gets taken to Duckworld and it's called Michael the Man?
I can only hope so. Remember when Michael Mann was still just considered a legend, but then they finally caught footage of him deep below the ocean surface?
Yeah.
In the old days, he was just like Curly's Gold.
Now, there are two parallel tracks going on here. I'll describe one of them first and then the other. Howard the Duck frees Phil, and they fix up a little gyroplane in a junkyard and lead the police on a merry chase. And by merry, I mean boring. It takes forever. And
it's like an hour of this movie is this fucking plane chase.
And it's like, I can't imagine why they thought audiences in the 1980s would be so incredibly entertained by seeing Tim Robbins and a man in a duck costume just flying around in a little plane.
I mean, you gotta assume this is the George Lucas influence, right? Where he's just like, I love vehicles. Yeah. I love, dog fights. I'm gonna do a big plane.
But it's got a real
gyroplane.
But it's got a real 80s Blues Brother car crash type aesthetic to it, where it's like bigger car crash is funnier, more cars means funnier. Has to be if the bigger it is, the funnier it is.
I mean, I think the Blues Brothers was an overrated movie, but the car crashes in that are fun in a way that this is just dull.
It's not. At the same time as that, Jennings and Bev show up at a nuclear power plant, or Jennings, I should say. Jennings somehow manages to get onto a congressional tour of the reactor. How this is explained is never. It's not. It's never really made clear. And he breaks into the reactor core and just walks on into it to soak up all that power. And now he's glowing even more. Air chase. Does a cop car fly off the road into a lake? Yes. Do they buzz some duck hunters and make them leap out of their boats? Yes. Howard starts yelling, "Tora, Tora, Tora, vengeance is mine." And it's like, those are two very different movies. Tora, 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 and vengeance is mine. And I think maybe he said Tora, 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 and he felt like that's going to make me feel insensitive. I'll mention a really awesome Japanese movie too. He mentioned Vengeance is Mine, the story, of course, of a real life killer. And then it's not that awesome, I guess. Then Jennings laser blasts his way through a roadblock. He blows up a row of cars. He's having a great time. And again, It's that aesthetic idea of more car explosions equals funnier. Not really the case. But you can all see that this monster from another dimension is really having a good time, and his quips are a level higher than Howard's. I think he has he's destroying a diner and he's like, closing time, and just starts blowing things up.
And he's like, somebody stop me, and smoking.
Yeah. They managed to get to the lab, Howard and Phil. The lab also has a lake.
Succotash. He's like stealing other people's.
Yeah. He's just like, ain't I a stinker? That kind of stuff. Want to buy a duck?
Anybody got any cheese?
Yeah. You crazy? That kind of stuff. Very old, very, very old catchphrase.
I'm the baby, gotta love me.
See me sometime, he says.
Yeah, then he goes, whoa, which actually predates Joey and Blossom.
Sorry, I just did a Mae West impression, and I guess she was in my mind because that was the other.
That's the other poster. You're right. It's My Duckling Chickadee or something like that, or My Darling Chick-a-Duck. It's like WC Ducks and Made Ducks or something like that. You're right.
For all the WC Fields and Mae West fans who are going out to see this Howard the Duck, George Lucas.
I mean, this is the 1980s. People would go see movies just because they were out, and there were plenty of people alive then who remembered seeing W.C. Fields and Mae West. It's like when you see there was this period of the 70s where people started getting very nostalgic for the 30s, and it's like, oh, there are people who lived through both of those times. There are people going to movies in the 70s who'd be like, oh yeah, I remember the 30s, as opposed to now when nobody remembers the 30s. Come on, they'd be 100 years old, and mummies can't go to the movies ever since they passed that law. So they find Phil and Howard show up. They find Bev tied up under the spectroscope as Jennings starts the machine. Phil takes Howard to get to the lab's neutron disintegrator, a test experimental weapon that's locked up in a cage. It's an untested super laser. Jennings is getting more and more monstery. Howard immediately screws up their plan by revealing that they're there, and they have like a little like golf cart airport car that they have the neutron distributor on, and he's like, what's this button do? Which is a foolish thing to do when there's a monster with your girlfriend tied up under a laser and you're trying to keep the element of surprise. At this point, Jennings, who has had no problem blowing up cars with his mind, really seems to be playing cat and mouse with our heroes and depowering down to a certain extent, because he just kind of snarls at them and is hurling these animated electro beams, which again look amazing. He unleashes hurricane breath at one point, which doesn't really square with his power set particularly, but whatever, I'll buy it. He's a Dark Overlord. I don't know what he can do. Howard and Overlord finally face off.
That's probably like a one-use ability that has a long cooldown.
Yeah. So probably his energy bar went down, and now he has to build it up again. Howard gives the immortal line, prepare to eat beak, which doesn't really make that much sense either in or out of context.
I mean, I guess maybe he wants to kiss him. I don't know.
I think or he wants him to eat his beak. I don't know, to help him become a person. I'm not going to need this beak anymore. They'll give me a human mouth. The disintegrator and the monster beams.
Ellie, do you think that if you remove a duck's beak, there's like a little human mouth underneath?
I have to. Yeah, that's what happens with Daffy when he. Oh, no, actually, there's no mouth underneath when his beak gets blown out.
Spins around and there's. Well, I mean, it's a black void, so you don't know.
It's like a little void, like Johnny Carcosa in the Alan Moore comics.
I gotta assume that underneath the bill is a human nose and a human mouth, just like any animal. If you take off like a pig's snout, there's a human nose underneath, right? Or if you take out like a snake's snout, it's just a human face underneath, right?
No,
I just want to.
What?
I want to clarify that our audience not remove snouts or faces off of any animals to figure out if Elliot's telling the truth.
No, because if it is true, it is horrifying, and I don't want to live in a that there's just human faces.
Like cosmic horror.
Let me out! Yeah. There's a big explosion. Is Howard dead? No, of course not. And Jennings is cured. In fact, his clothes even look better than they did before. They're no longer torn and ripped. They're no longer Rip Torn, who did the wardrobe for the movie, uncredited. It turns out the Dark Overlord has been released from his body. They free Bev, but that's when, Stuart, Dan, you want to explain this? One of the top moments in the movie?
Oh, yeah. It's revealed that they've just kicked the monster out of the Doctor, and so the Doctor is revealed, and the Doctor is like amazing, like stop motion, go motion, whatever. Like,
well, the monster is. The Doctor is not stop motion.
Yeah, the monster.
That would be amazing if the monster was Jeffrey Jones in a costume, and then from that point on, the Doctor character was a stop motion puppet. That would be an interesting choice. Not the choice I would have made, but again, I'm not George Lucas.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's be honest about this monster. From a design standpoint, it is a Rancor with a Sarlacc mouth, but that's awesome. I don't care if it's a little bit.
It's got all these little like pincer fingers all over it that are just waving around, looking creepy.
And sometimes they like shoot out little like tubes to do
It's
stuff.
not the greatest monster design, sure. There's something kind of like cut rate crab about it, but the animation effects are great.
It looks great.
What's Elliot? What is your favorite monster design?
I mean, everyone's favorite monster design, or should be, is the xenomorph from Alien. It's the perfect scary monster design. It's one of the few designs in a horror movie where when they finally reveal what it looks like, you're like, oh, that's as scary as I imagined it was going to be. But otherwise, I don't know. You got to go with classic.
No,
Gojira, I guess.
For me, it's a beholder. It's just like a shitload of eyes on a big ball that floats around with a mouth.
Yeah. And Dan, what about your favorite monster design?
I mean, I agree with Elliot that
Dan's probably gonna be like, man, the worst monster.
Whoa, and he'd win.
Sounds just like me. No, the xenomorph is tops. It's this is a little humanoid to be a monster. Like you could get more creative than this, but I've always liked the Tarman zombie from Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah, that's a really fun zombie design. But this design, it's kind of like they said, like, get me something H.R. Geiger-esque, but I do not want to hire H.R. Geiger. Like, try to get me something really creepy and gross, but like without the elegance, let's say. But the animation looks great.
Yeah,
now,
like get me the final boss from Clay Fighters, the video game.
Yes,
and it has that like herky jerky movement that like reminded me of like a fucking Ed 209 or something.
Yeah, that beautiful. I don't know who did the stop motion for this. I mean, Ed 209 is Phil Tippett. Yeah. But like who's right up there with Harryhausen, but in just like sheer great stuff that he's created. But it's got that neat look where it's like, oh, I don't think this is supposed to look super real, but it looks super cool.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so Howard defeats the giant alien monster using quack fu, probably, right?
Nope, not exactly. Now, here's the thing. The monster, now that it has been freed of the human shell, it's there in its full form. It is finally ready to lay waste to Earth and destroy all humanity. It seems to have depowered quite a bit. Maybe it's tired. It's been a long day. Maybe it's in need of a snack. I don't know. But Howard cuts through the Overlord's tentacles surprisingly easily, and it's surprisingly bloody. Again, PG movie, which means please go away. It catches Bev and Phil in some I-beams, and it just kind of like traps them in this weird video loop effect, which was also kind of cool, but it's like, just blow them up, dude. I don't know why you're holding. I guess you need their bodies for your buddies. Bodies for buddies.
Elliot's camera started shaking, and for a second I thought he was going to get zapped into Duck World.
Oh
no. So do you guys, is Bodies for Buddies a good charity for us to plug? Also, it's human bodies who are used for aliens to get them in back to Earth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not for a My Buddy doll.
No, yeah. It's I would love to see now Blumhouse like licenses the My Buddy property. We got a guy who like kills someone and carries the body around with him. Although I guess that's just Swiss Army Man, except without him actually murdering him. They catch Bill. Howard hits him with the disintegrator beam. Finally, it works. He blows up. There's some great animation effects. But that laser spectroscope still bringing demons down to Earth. Howard destroys the machine, even though it's his only way home. But you know what? Now, maybe this is his home. They find him and he's dead. And then he goes, oh, I'm an overlord. He's just fooling, even though if I had been Bev in that moment, I would have murdered him, thinking that he was an overlord now. But he's just joshing with them. Cut to, you guessed it, big rock and roll concert. Cherry Bomb is playing what appears to be the biggest concert of their career. Maybe they're one of those bands.
Probably the biggest venue in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean Howard has revamped the act. Like he's now that he's taken over as manager, he's found his niche.
I mean,
they're playing in a venue that doesn't have a chain link fence blocking off the band like they used to play in, or like the band in Roadhouse would play in.
Do you think that's the same club that Bauhaus is playing in at the beginning of The Hunger? Because it looks kind of similar.
Yeah.
Oh wait, am I supposed to answer that? Is that
Although I guess that club's supposed to be in New York, so never mind. So I mean, I thought maybe Cherry Bomb was one of those bands that, like the Ramones, were in America. They would play like kind of small shows, but they'd go overseas and they'd play these like stadiums.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but anyway, they dedicate this next song to their manager, and they play the big Howard the Duck song. Dan, what does the song teach us about Howard the Duck? Do you remember any of it?
No, I don't remember if it teaches us anything about Howard the Duck. What I remember is Howard the Duck.
And it also it teaches us
gets repeated a lot.
and it teaches us that if it ain't got the funk, you don't feel it.
Oh, okay.
Or he can't hear it, something like that. If it things without funk, sensory wise, he just cannot perceive them. And so that's what the song teaches about Howard the Duck. Is how
it's like a T-Rex that can't sense movement, but
exactly.
Funk.
Exactly. Ducks have a funk-based sensing system. Okay. Sure. And Howard comes out, and now Phil is now their stage director, because I guess being a biologist, an evolutionary biologist, has trained him for, I guess, I mean, it trained him for running a neutron disintegrator or whatever it was. I guess he can run the stage at the show.
He's still saving up. This is just a day job. He's still saving up money for that museum that he's
going to open. Howard accidentally ends up on stage, and he's just going to jam guitar. And when I was a kid, I thought this was the coolest thing I could ever see.
People are losing their shit.
Yeah. I want to take this moment to do a little segment here where, there's every movie has their goofs on IMDb.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you'll see why I'm breaking in right now in a moment.
You're like, oh, wait, it's listed as no goofs, 100% factually accurate.
There's several goofs. I want to highlight a couple. One goof, this is verbatim from IMDb, palm trees in Cleveland, Ohio. So we can all agree that's a goof.
That's a goof. There's only one palm tree in Cleveland, Ohio.
Here's one. Too many errors about nuclear reactors to list.
To be fair, I don't think there's like a big door that just opens onto the core of the nuclear reactor that can be accessed from a regular hallway. Yes.
Right. But the goofster here has abdicated his or her or their responsibility.
I'm going to give them partial credit. That might be a failing grade. Show your work.
But I'm going to propose a goof to you guys based on this scene, which is.
But you're proposing to the goof because have you talked to your girlfriend about this, that you're marrying a goof?
I think she's cool with it. But here's a goof that I would like to.
That's a sequel to the Goofy movie, right? Proposing to the goof.
Yeah, it's called Man and Goof.
So here's my goof. Howard is able to play hot licks on a human guitar without any adjustment, despite having only 4 feather-covered duck fingers. So that's the goof that I would like to present, because he is really tearing it up Back to the Future style on this guitar.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because it is the only flaw in an otherwise perfect depiction.
Otherwise,
those 3 flaws.
A sparkling gem.
Now, Dan, you brought this up because you play a little guitar, right? You have some experience with the old axe.
Yeah.
You play a tiny
if you had only 4 giant feather-covered fingers, would that make your guitar playing better or worse?
Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying that one cannot play guitar under those conditions. I believe
implying it.
I believe Django Reinhardt did not have 5 fingers, and he was one of the greatest guitar players. But
you think Django fit?
Howard, on the other hand, one can only assume that since this is presented as an accident that he arrives on stage, has not noodled around on a human guitar before. The problem is more that with his 4 feathered fingers, he is immediately proficient.
Now, Dan, here's where I would suggest that there's a certain gap of time between the final plot scene and this concert scene. And in that time, I bet he has noodled, as you so hilariously put it, on a human guitar. My worry is that his feathers would get caught in the strings, and it would be such a strain on his relationship with Bev that she would always be finding these giant feathers in the strings of her electric guitars. How would you solve something like that? I'll tell you how. By getting Howard, for their anniversary, his own guitar. That's how you take a problem and turn it into a strengthening the foundation of the relationship. And that's one to grow on. The more you know. Now, I know I've mixed 2 different brands of public service announcement at the end of that, but I felt like it was strong enough to carry both.
Yeah. What about the G.I. Joe?
And the more you, what was it? Winning
is half the battle.
Winning, I was going to say winning is half the battle. In fact, winning is the entirety of the battle. Yeah, knowing is half the battle. The other half, of course, being excessive force. Now,
it sounds like we're ready.
Wait, and we finally.
Sounds like we're ready for final judgments.
Wait, we see at the very end.
I'm imagining Charlene just off camera, like tapping her watch.
We see at the very end that Howard and Bev are in love, and that's the end of the movie. And there's I kept waiting for the mid-credit scene where they tried to create the Howard cinematic universe by introducing some other humor-based Marvel character, Obnoxio the Clown or somebody like that, but it didn't happen.
A Captain Carrot.
Who's the DC
guy? Character, Dan, but thank you for playing.
Okay. So Spider-Ham. Okay, fine.
Good.
Spider.
Okay, there you go. Got it.
Peter Porker.
Captain Carrot.
Let's go on to final judgments.
I have a duty to perform.
Yes or no, this is your last chance. No beating around the bush.
It's nice.
What did it say?
Nothing. That he might have been insane, there is no doubt.
Our future.
I want to point out a great animation. I don't know why I didn't get to have any of the chicken at the end of it. Only the Stuart and Dan had chicken.
No, we were both going to come in from the middle, from the sides to feed you in the middle.
Oh, my dream.
Yeah.
So what? And so, Dan, what are for anyone who missed the animation? What are our 3 categories?
It's good, bad movie, bad movie, or movie you kind of liked. I will offer the success. I will offer. I don't even know what word I was fumbling there. I forgotten.
Succession. I think we were going to offer people the show Succession to watch instead of Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
It's better quality-wise, certainly, but I don't think it's going to hit the same notes.
Yeah. No, I would like to say that I would give the judgment of good, bad. Maybe fast forward through the endless gyroscope airplane gyrocopter scene that goes on for fucking ever,
or slow it down, watch it at half
or
speed.
slow it down until it becomes kind of like a I don't know an Andy Warhol art piece.
Yes,
yeah, it's like that Gimme Pizza video with the Olsen twins.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, look, this is probably largely a nostalgia issue in the sense that I have associations with
communists.
Wait, I'm getting a weird lag.
Oh, I'm saying you have associations with communists.
No, but are you hearing the audio problem?
Oh no, I'm not hearing it.
Okay, good.
No.
So I have associations with 80s would-be blockbuster special effects filmmaking. I have associations with Howard the Duck. A lot of that may be influencing me, but I also look. This previous year we had Cats, right? And part of the amazing thing about Cats is you rarely see so much big Hollywood money thrown behind a folly. And so likewise, I enjoy sitting back on my couch and thinking to myself, well, I personally might like the Howard the Duck comics, but it is crazy that the guy behind perhaps the most influential, biggest movie series of all time decided that he wanted to produce a blockbuster Howard the Duck movie, and also that this was the one that they made. And it's just a lot of fun to see the craziness. So I'll go good, bad.
I'm gonna agree with you, Dan. Can you hear me? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna agree with you because it's not the kind of good bad where you're laughing this is crazy. How did they do this? But intellectually, the whole time you're this is crazy. Why did they do this? And I feel someday maybe someone will be able to answer that question, and magically all of humanity's problems will evaporate as we have cut the Gordian knot of trying to figure out what was in everybody's heads when they made Howard the Duck. And I think it's just worth putting our best minds on it. So I would say it's a GB, a good bad.
I'm going to say this is a movie I kind of like. Partly because I grew up with it, so there's a ton of nostalgia. I love I love scenes in an 80s rock club where everybody is dressed different and interesting. And it's the lines of scummy creepos is so clearly drawn. And I love that the movie's split in half between kind of boring character piece and then kind of boring monster story. And then there's a giant claymation monster at the end. Yeah, give me that movie. I'll watch it.
All right. Well, very positive reviews of Howard the Duck.
Surprisingly, after what we said about it.
Surprisingly. Okay. Well, let's before we move on to the next segment, another quick mention. This is all for charity, free to watch, but we're encouraging folks to donate to charity.
I'm going to interrupt, Dan. I don't know if you're like me, but I right now there's a lot of shit going on, and I would like to know ways that I can help. And we have provided some great charities through the link, and by donating to them, you're helping. If you can't physically be on the front lines, or even if you can, this is a way that you can also help.
Yeah, and there's an array of stuff, like I said before, from folks who donate $20 or more to charity and send us their receipts at flophousecharity@gmail.com. We'll select 3 random entries to get that merch. If we get more than 500 of those overall, we'll also do a read of The Boy Next Door, which means that even if you don't win an individual prize, everyone wins except for us, who has to read The Boy Next Door.
And some guests. I think we'll probably get some guests to do it with us.
You know, like, we were saying $20 to enter the raffle, but like any amount is helpful. You know, whatever you're able to afford. And as said before, for every entry, we are also matching with $20, split evenly between food banks across America and bail funds across America, up to a cap of $10,000 from us, the Flophouse. And now, as we said before, we'll reiterate now, if you want to ask a question maybe, or say something to us that we can react to, on Twitter, hashtag it #FlopQuestion, and we're going to talk to some folks now.
Okay, so we've got a lot of... Oh, wait.
Hey, hold on, there's an animation.
Oh, I forgot, I'll let the animation go.
There's an animation, and hold on.
That is a great animation. So, wait, hold on, what? Is Dan... Okay, so Dan's been replaced by a picture of Dan.
Wow, that's quite a headshot.
This is a little peek behind the curtain.
That was from like 2 years ago, right?
I think so. This is a little peek behind the curtain. This is usually the time when we're recording an episode when we have to stop so Dan can use the bathroom. So I assume that's what's happening
Yeah,
right now. We've had a lot of good hashtag flop questions coming through. We're going to pick as many as I can, so let's try to answer them real fast. Number one, is Stuart drinking an old fashioned?
No, I was drinking a Negroni.
Okay. Here's hashtag flop question, hashtag Radio Zork. I tried jiggling the door handle. The door is locked. Thank you for playing Radio Zork. If anyone else wants to write in, that's hashtag flop question, hashtag Radio Zork. Someday someone's going to open that door. Question for, let's see, Dan's not here, but what anthropomorphic bird humanoid hybrid would each of us be? I'll say real quick, cormorant. I love the way they dive. Stuart, what kind of human bird hybrid would you be?
I would be a pelican because I'm like kind of silly and I have a really big gullet.
Perfect. Here's a question just for me. Flannel shirt, big glasses, male pattern baldness. What is the next evolution in dadness? Elliot asking for a friend. Earlier today, I did literally to my wife, I really want to be spending a lot of time in the garage with my hobbies and paperwork. That's the next step in my being a dad. Stuart, here's one I think would be good for you. Do you have a favorite direct to VHS or direct to DVD film?
Oh, wow. I mean, I feel like a lot of Stuart Gordon's later movies were direct to VHS or DVD. Castle Freak, Day Gone, I think, is a big one where I remember tracking it down. Day Gone, which is Stuart Gordon's movie, the late Stuart Gordon,
an adaptation of what, the Shadow over Innsmouth?
Yeah, but also like taking some elements of the Day Gone short story as well. It's great. Check it out.
Dan, here's a question I think would be good for you. Which do you prefer, Howard the Duck or Mallard Fillmore?
I just want to say, I just have to admit, I left for a second there. I put my stand in.
Oh, we couldn't tell.
You may not have noticed that
okay.
No, we couldn't tell. It looked just like you.
And
at about the same emotional range.
Yeah.
Wow.
and emotional maturity. Well, I mean, Mallard Fillmore is an unfunny, deeply conservative, reactionary duck, and Howard is none of those things other than being a duck. So I'm gonna go with Howard.
Good save at the end there.
Yeah.
He was a duck. What's your favorite wild animal? That's a question that comes in. I'm just gonna say elephant, runner-up, pangolin, but pangolins are kind of not popular right now.
Really? Why? What do you mean they're not
Pangolins,
popular?
they're considered a possible source for the COVID animal to human
Oh.
transaction. But pangolins, they're like elegant Asian armadillos. I love them, but elephants, of course, hold my heart. Dan, favorite wild animal?
I like foxes a lot. They're very sleek. If they are Robin Hood, also they're very sexy. Otters are good. I like an animal that looks like it's having fun, and an otter looks like it's having fun.
Okay, and Stu?
Bears, baby.
Well, we're getting some real insights into the Flop Gang tonight.
Okay, so what's been your most genuinely uncomfortable movie watching experience? Dan?
I don't. Oh, you know what it is? I mean, we've talked about this before on the show. I showed a bunch of people brain damage at one of my Halloween shows, and there's a scene where a woman is giving head to a worm creature that exudes drugs and feeds on people, and I may have misread the room in terms of how prepared they were to see something so gross and weird.
Yeah, you're like running around the room like laughing, being like, "This is amazing."
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was watching The Devil's Advocate with my parents because there's a lot of nudity.
Yeah, and at the end, the devil is trying to get Keanu Reeves to have sex with his sister.
Yeah. Well, and also Stuart kept being like, "Woo, the devil!" the whole time.
Yep.
Speaking of which, if you could join one cult featured in a movie, which one would it be and why?
One cult.
Yeah, one movie cult.
Totally Conan the Barbarian, dude. The snake cult. Their parties look crazy. Now there's a chance you're going to get your head chopped off.
Are the Muppets a cult? Because I would love to have
Yes, they are. That's fair.
Okay.
I was going to say similarly the Fraggles, who have turned their back on modern society and live a primitive existence underground. This is a question I want to ask about. This person want to ask about critical darlings we just don't like. What are some critical faves that we found ourselves questioning the critical consensus on? I'll go first. Controversial answer. Some like it hot. Don't like it, never liked it. What do you guys think?
No, I mean, like famously, I think, well, famously, what the like we're podcasters, nothing about us is famous.
Nope.
But I was gonna say, like, both you and I agree. Some like it hot and Bring Up Baby, two like huge classics of the comedy. Like AFI puts them on their top comedy list every time. I just never got into either of them.
So here's a question. Oh yeah, Stuart, do you have an answer too?
I was just gonna say I'm not super into the works of Wes Anderson. I find them to be a little too carefully constructed, and I find them distancing.
But what about the framing of my my shot right now, Stuart? How about this?
And your name should be underneath you in sans serif font.
It's hard to. I'm mirrored, so it's hard to get perfectly symmetrical. How about this?
Dan, the mirror shouldn't affect the symmetry. You're still trying to get in the center. The center is the same, no matter whether the image is reversed or not.
Trying to tilt anyway.
I see what you're saying. You move right and the image moves left.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is a question about Howard the Duck. Do you think they blew their load with 2 sets of duck boobs in the first 10 minutes and no others?
Yes.
Interesting question. A hard yes.
It does seem to promise a lot more duck boobs in the sense that, like, I think that like the beginning of a movie should sort of like set your expectations for the film, and so my expectations were set, and it was all nude ducks, and then there are almost no ducks, like other than the main duck, for the rest of the film. So
yeah, true.
I think the worst thing about watching Howard the Duck the other night was I was watching it on Amazon, and while the credits were playing, after the credit scene where they're playing music and stuff, in the bottom corner there was a thing that I could click on to watch their next suggested movie, which of course was Ski Patrol, and I was like, it is too late. I can't watch Ski Patrol right now.
You really wanted to, didn't you?
Of course I did.
Yeah.
This is a number of questions about whether I've been able to convince Sammy to share more of his novel, The Mystery of the Stinky Cheese. with the world. He's been pretty resistant to it, but we started working on a new book recently called Big Lincoln, Little Lincoln. And I think maybe I'll be able to share some of that at some
Now,
point.
is that about a little Lincoln that is injected into the knee of the larger Lincoln?
No, that is something that your doctor did once, and it was super weird, and we're not doing that. It is about two brothers. Big Lincoln is actually the younger of the two, and he's just called Big Lincoln because his hat is bigger. They both wear stovepipe hats. And as Sammy has described it, there's a magic switch, and when they flip it, different magical things happen, and they have no control over it. So we'll see what happens in that story. Let's see. Now that we know that Stuart converses to his game figures, have Dan or Elliot created any inanimate objects that they regularly have conversations with? I will say, being an Angelino now, I have a car that I'm constantly frustrated with, and also a garage door opener that I'm very frustrated with. So I hold a lot of angry conversations with those. Daniel?
Do you have cool nicknames for either of them?
The car is fucking car, and the garage door opener is you stupid goddamn garage door opener.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, inanimate objects, yeah, other than as Elliot, sort of opens the door for swearing at inanimate objects that are giving me trouble at that moment. I don't
like a fleshlight or I don't know.
Yeah,
dishwasher.
you're not. You don't. I don't know. I don't even want to go down that road. Sorry.
Okay, fair point. Now that we know this is a question. Since we know what Duck World erotica is like, what about other fantasy worlds? What is the Playboy analog in the Cars universe? Very good question.
I mean,
probably it's called Play Cars.
Oh, I would just assume that would just be one of those like car magazines that you already see at like a gas station, but it's
or
a
barber shop waiting room.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
okay.
like a lowrider or.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume in what would the Lord of the Rings erotica be like? Not Lord of the Rings themed erotica, Stuart, but in the world, in Tolkien's world.
Oh wow, I don't know. I mean, the races are pretty homogenous, right? It's a pretty balkanized society. So I feel like, I mean, it would be like, obviously, like in Rohan, it would be like horse girls or horse boys or whatever.
Okay, fair. This is a person who asks, have any of you read Chip Starsky's Howard the Duck series? If not, were you aware that Leah Thompson guest starred in an issue and is now canonically Flash Thompson's aunt in the Marvel Universe? I did read it, and I really enjoyed it. And I found that enjoyable too. Have you guys read that series?
No, I did read that he wrote a new version of the series when I was doing my limited research for this live show, but no, I've not read it myself.
It's worth reading. Here's a question just for Dan. Why do you hate a pup named Scooby-Doo?
I don't hate it. I will say that the theme song is amazing. I could listen to the theme song. I was gonna say all day. That's not true. I could listen to it twice in a row, and I would enjoy it. I don't know. I just don't. I mean, like, I haven't seen what Monsters Incorporated or what's the or Mystery Incorporated. Like, there's a Netflix version of it that's supposed to be actually legit good. I have not seen that. But it's a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. They clear your eyes of nostalgia. They're not very good. Also, I like the young Fred design. I find very off-putting.
Okay, interesting. A lot of questions about who we would cast in the MCU version of Howard the Duck. Who's going to play Howard? Who's going to play Bev? Now, Stuart, you're best with these wizard-style casting calls. So who would you have play Howard the Duck, and who would play Beverly Switzler?
I mean, the first person that comes to mind to play Beverly is Zazie Beetz, because she's got that big crimped hair already, kind of like she's, and she's, I don't know. I'll shut up.
No, she's good. She's a good.
Yeah, no, she's good. She'd be a good Bev. But what about Howard? That's the question. It's not called Bev, the movie.
I mean, Howard already exists in the MCU, and he's played by Seth Green, but we can throw that out of the.
I mean that, and
yeah,
the
Seth
Hulk
Green
is
might be
played by
watching
Ed
this,
Norton,
and he'll
man.
be very angry.
Yeah.
There's a world where Ed Norton plays the Hulk, and that's not how it ended up. So I think it's okay to recast.
Jason Alexander, have it be a Duckman.
Does play Duckman. I think I would have it played every line alternating. Howard, it would be either Jason Alexander and Gilbert Gottfried. They both played ducks, and they alternate lines. Mm-hmm. And Bev would be played by my wife's friend Bev, who I think would enjoy hanging around with the duck.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Here's a question: shouldn't Dr. Jennings be called Dr. Jennings? No, he's not a duck, but a human. If you had the chance to watch the Duck Planets version of just one movie from our human world, which would you choose, and what would its waterfowl-themed pun title be? And I know I would say the Duckalogue, which is 10 short films, each exploring a different commandment in the Old Testament of the duck religion.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good idea. I would want to see Jurassic Duck Park, where some ducks are trying to clone some ancient humans from a mosquito out of a thing of like a rock.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens.
I would like to see the movie Duck, where Kirsten Duck and Michelle Mallard Williams, I don't know, talk about Nixon Duck.
Okay, but yeah, Duck Nixon. Okay,
Duck
I mean,
Nixon,
it's interesting
Duck Nixon.
because Dick is his
right
nickname.
there. It was literally right there the whole time.
Yeah. So here's a question for each of us. What is Stu drinking?
Right now, coffee.
What is Dan's favorite book displayed behind him?
Wait, hold on. I gotta look. Elliot, you gotta.
Let's just say the Power Broker. The last question is for me. Elliot, am I growing grapes? Good eye. We do have grapes growing in the backyard here at the house. And Dan is holding Harpo Speaks, Harpo Marx's memoir, classic Dan. This is not a question. This is a suggested tagline for the poster of Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck who fucks. Yeah, fair. Except he doesn't throughout the movie, despite carrying an opened condom throughout in his wallet.
Yeah, I mean, he's carrying that condom around like a threat, and it's a threat that he is not going to back up.
Yeah. If we were ever stuck on a desert island, what foods would we imagine the other guys being? Like in a Looney Tunes cartoon, it goes without saying, I'd imagine you guys as Popeyes. Stu, you would be a drumstick, and Dan, you would be a thigh. What food would you imagine the others would be if it was you?
Stuart's kind of like tall and rangy, so maybe I'd think of him as like a Slim Jim. Elliot, mock turtle soup.
Interesting.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I would imagine Dan as a little box of popcorn with arms and legs, and Elliot would be like a box of goobers with arms and legs, and you'd be leading me to my destruction. Chasing down the beach.
Let's all go to the lobby.
Yeah,
but
the lobby is hell.
Oh no.
Okay, this is a question that might need some thought. At the beginning of the Howard the Duck summary, I mentioned that Howard's home planet seems to have non-binary genders. Using our collective cishet might, it says, what characters would you retroactively say are non-binary? I'm going to say in the movie Laura, I think most of the male characters in that movie are non-binary and have any number of interesting and probably exciting sexual explorations in their past and future. What about you guys? Who's a character where you're like, oh, in retrospect, that's a non-binary character?
Oh God, Elliot, this is like, you're setting us up the bomb. I don't, I know that I could probably think of something, but I've got nothing, and I fear like saying something very ignorant right now.
So that's a D minus.
I would say the in the most recent Terminator movie, I feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator's T-800 character has some really like non-straight white male energy, and that's not just because he's a robot. Like I feel like he's allowing his experiences and his trauma to to like make him a more realized person, which is not something that men often have a tendency to do.
This question has come up a surprising number of times. What Dune characters would we be in the new adaptation of Dune? Stuart, I see you as a real Duncan Idaho.
Oh, thank you. Oh, bless you, little guy.
Is it sort of like a craven sort of courtier kind of character?
Yeah, I mean, you could be that evil Mentat.
I feel like my beard sort of gives me like the energy of sort of like a second, like a conniving second in command to some sort of powerful person. But
right, I could see that. Yeah. And I think I'd be the guy who they have to sign out the Gom Jabbar from when they use it to test people in the beginning of the movie. He doesn't appear in the film probably, but he works in the closet at the Bene Gesserit convent monastery. and they have to sign it out because there's only so many gumja bars in the system. They're expensive, and if they go missing, I got to track them down. It comes out of my budget.
And that's such a hassle.
Exactly, it's a huge hassle. Let's see. Have there ever been any movies we've walked out of partway through? This wasn't walking out because it was in my own home, but my wife and I did turn off Ford versus Ferrari about a half hour in. We were like, yeah, we got it. It's like Cars, but with people. We don't need to watch the rest of this.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that really what it's like?
Almost exactly, yes.
Okay. This was not a matter of like the movie being bad, but it was like my birthday and I was going to see the Eye, the Korean film. And like, it just like the vibe of it was just wrong for me at that moment. Like I wanted like a fun movie to celebrate. It was like my birthday. Like I wanted to like have fun, and just like the wrong vibe. I'm like, you know what? Not enjoying this. Let's go. It's a free country. You can leave a movie. I'm sure it's a good movie. It got a lot of great reviews. It just wasn't right at that time.
And my answer is no. I've never left a movie midway in the movie theater. Wow. Not even Man of Steel, which I was very close to walking out of. But I couldn't because it was my father-in-law's birthday.
It's some interesting exculpatory evidence there for staying and the crime of staying and watching all of Man of Steel. Here's a question just for me. Is Elliot worried about how the sun is setting? No, it does that every day. I've gotten used to it. How many more questions do you think we have time for, Daniel? Because there's a lot of questions.
Let's wrap it up in let's do another 3 and then call it a night.
Okay. This is, let's see. What movie nudity startled you the most? Howard the Duck aside.
Startled me the most?
Yeah.
Whoa. Oh boy. Like it's a question like there's two things, right? There's like the visceral quality of a nude
Just say
scene.
The Shining, dude. It's crazy.
Oh, that's a good one.
She's a ghost.
There's the visceral quality of the nude scene where there's something like Eastern Promises where you're like, oh man, they're having a whole like fully nude, like penis out fight scene.
That's a lot of
knives. Like that's startling nudity. Or there's like nudity where you're just like, oh, this movie did not lead me to believe this. Like something like The Stepfather, like at the very end, has a completely gratuitous shower scene. Where you're like, okay, well, I was not led to believe this was the type of movie that was going to do this, and here it is. Like, I don't know. What do you think, Elliot?
I think The Shining is pretty up there, but I feel like there's every now and then there's a movie where I'm like, oh, I didn't expect to see a penis in this, and then it's suddenly not on camera. Like someone will just walk by without, and it's one of those weird things that I'm always surprised at my relative lack of reaction to seeing a man's penis in a film where like it's something you see so rarely, and it's just like you don't see it very much in American movies. And when you do see like this is Viggo Mortensen again, but in Captain Fantastic, there's a scene where he just opens the door to his trailer and he's nude and he's yelling at a woman who's offended that he's nude. And it's one of those things where I'm like, the first instant that it's over, you're like, oh yeah, that's just a person's body. And it makes me always be like, why is that a thing that I'm surprised to see? Like, why does it suddenly startle me for a moment? Because after the first second, you're like, oh yeah, that's just that person's body. I don't know. It's very weird. But in Eastern Promises, I just kept being like, ooh, watch out. It's very delicate down there. This is a question. What are your favorite fake commercials in a movie? I think I have an idea what Stuart's answer might be.
Does it start with cheddar and end with goblin? Is that what you were?
That was my guess.
That's totally it. The Cheddar Goblin and Mandy. Yep.
Pretty good.
Any of the additional stuff in RoboCop's great.
Yeah.
Basically anything in RoboCop is great.
I also would go with cheddar goblin, so I'm being boring, but that's
Cheddar Goblin's it's a pretty amazing fake commercial, and it comes at the perfect time in the movie when you're at least prepared for it. And it's one of those things. It's one of those moments where you're like, it's like seeing a man's penis in a movie where you're like, wait, what? Hold on, what am I seeing? Except the startling continues because you're like, what universe does this take place in?
Yeah.
Where they have this commercial on television.
Yeah.
It makes you want to stand up in the middle of the movie theater and be like, everybody, we just saw that in a movie theater.
It's the whole experience of seeing Cats and Howard the Duck together, wrapped up in one short commercial. What why did that happen?
Yeah. And let's see, is this let me see if I can find a good last question for us. There's a lot of good questions. What would be a particularly good finishing one? Let's see. Someone's saying they love Stu's presentation. That's not a question, but okay, here's one. What's another fringe Marvel character you want to see get their own movie? There's also a question about what my belt buckle is. I can briefly show you that. My belt buckle is for the 100th anniversary of the Statue of Liberty, because I believe America is for everyone who wants to come live here. But what fringe Marvel character should we get their own movie? Look, guys, I mentioned in my presentation, I'm a big Warhead. That's an Adam Warlock fan. I want more Adam Warlock, please. But Stuart, what were you gonna say?
I don't know if he counts as fringe, but Wonder Man.
Yeah, I think that counts.
West. And I feel like that's like a slam dunk. It's such an easy character to do a movie for. A superhero who wants to be a movie star, but is actually not a very good actor.
I'll take a peek behind the curtain. I actually was getting a pitch ready when Marvel TV was still a division of Marvel Entertainment for a Wonder Man show. And I was told by them that he was off limits to them at the moment. But I was like, it's so perfect for exactly that reason. It's so good.
I mean, this is a great ending question for you, being a Marvel zombie, but I don't.
Wow.
You seem to know a lot about Howard the Duck's black and white magazine, and suddenly.
Yeah, Dan's more of a DC guy. He's like, "Fuck you, Diamond Comics."
There was like a rabbit.
Stu with the up to the minute topical joke about the comic industry.
There was like a rabbit alien from early issues of Star Wars. Let's say that one.
Jax. He shows up in one page of Jeffrey Brown's book, Darth Vader and Friends. And each time we turn to that page, Gabriel goes, I like that rabbit.
How can you not?
He's a big green rabbit. He wears a red spacesuit. Actually, this is a good final question. This is our most recent question. Will you all be returning to Toronto? Of course, we had a Toronto live show scheduled for April that was canceled because the world fell apart. But guys, is it fair to say we do not have immediate plans? We don't know when we'll be traveling again, but we will return to Toronto to do a show at some point.
I mean, I think it's fair to say, like, in general, we don't have immediate plans to tour because, no matter what certain people in the government think, it's not safe to do so just yet. But we will as soon as we can. I think we all really enjoy seeing you face to face rather than imagining you maybe laughing at us at home. And we enjoy traveling, and we'll be back.
I think that'll be really nice. And also, everyone was telling me last time we were there that I had to go see that Guillermo del Toro exhibit, and I didn't get to see it. So now I'll finally get to see it.
I don't know if it's still there,
right,
dude.
What?
Yeah, I don't know if it's
I
still
think
there.
You might have missed it. It was incredible.
But there was time now.
Break your glasses. Commit to the bit.
I gotta break my glasses for the bit.
Like, that always bothered me because, like, if they're reading glasses, he could probably just make his way down to like the ruins of like a CVS and pick up some.
You saw how thick those glasses are. Those are not reading glasses. Come on.
Yeah.
And how's he gonna find his way to a CVS?
Read really close.
That's an even fairer point here.
You read up like here. Time enough at last. Here.
And until his arms fall off.
Yeah.
Great. How's he gonna masturbate and read the book at the same time, Dan? Because that was the subtext of the scene. That was the subtext of the scene.
Look, guys, I think this has been great. We should just say before we wrap everything up, hey, charity, it's nice. It'll make you feel real good, and it'll help other people. You can go to this site that's up on the screen right now. If this is too difficult for you somehow, you can also just go to our website, click on the blog section where it says charity, has all that information.
Really make them feel bad.
Same link. No, I mean, donate to charity. If you want to enter the raffle, you can. The information's all there on the website. If you just want to do it because you want to help, that's great. Both of those things are not mutually exclusive in any way. We're just wanting to encourage people to donate to charity, and your donations encourage our own donations. As I said for every receipt you send in for the raffle drawing, we will donate $20 split between food banks and bail funds. So that's that.
And if we get what happens if we get 500 donations?
If we get 500 of those emails, we will read the Boy Next Door movie script. We will cast ourselves, I assume, in the leading roles, but we'll also have folks who you may know from Flophouse shows past in supporting roles.
like
Dan, I'm going to
Sylvester
campaign.
Stallone and Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Michael Caine.
Yeah, Andy Mooney, Tom Brokaw. Dan, I'm going to campaign pretty hard for you to play J-Lo.
Great. It's the part I was born to play, baby.
Yeah, Elliot, you already rented out a billboard in LA, and you're going to camp underneath it to get Dan that role, right?
Yeah, it says for your consideration. It has a picture of Dan, his face pasted on J-Lo's body from Hustlers. I know it's not the same movie, but you know.
Yeah.
I mean, Elliot
it's
already
more
has
timely.
that photo. He made that photo long ago for his own purposes, but yeah.
Purely for recreational purposes.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Can't sue me.
I want to thank, there are other people who made this show possible. I want to thank Matt Carmen, who is hiding behind that square on your screen that says the Flophouse, assuming that your screen looks like ours. He is our tech guru. He made this thing possible. I want to thank John Holt, who did all of the animations except for the opening animation, which he only did the ending for. That is Tony Ochre. I wanted to thank him for that. We've used it for our touring live shows. Thanks to all of you for helping us out. Is there anyone else I'm forgetting? I mean, thanks to Maximum Fun for being our home. And yeah.
I would say thanks
to
once
everybody
again
for spending their evening with us.
Thanks for watching. Thanks once again to everybody who is standing up for what they believe in, if it's the same thing we believe in. If you stand up for other things that we don't believe in, oh boy, I will not be thanking you.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for watching, and just maybe, we'll do more of these. But if we don't do more of these, it's only because the world has gotten considerably better, and so maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You win either way, right? I guess. I don't know. Should we sign off? Let's sign off.
Probably. This is the part we're the best at, ending the show.
For the Flophouse, I have been Dan McCoy.
I'm Stuart Wellington.
And here, in the pitch black world of Los Angeles, where darkness reigns, and I'm lit in a very ominous way, I am Elliot Kalin, saying, good night, my darklings.
Bye, Stuart. Bye, everyone. Bye.